Hi, everybody in podcast land and also on YouTube. I'm James.
I'm David.
I'm Riley.
And this is the Carpool Critics movie podcast, where today we are finally wrapping up our coverage of the Lord of the Rings trilogy.
It's just getting started.
The original
What?
trilogy.
The Hobbit.
No.
Anyways.
We might do The Hobbit.
Oh, by the way, if you're part of our convoy, the people who watch the movies before our podcast and follow along every week, we love you. And next week, we are going to be doing The Silence of the Lambs with special guest Sarah.
Yeah.
It's another Sarah episode, baby.
She's back.
With fava beans.
She's Pickle Rick.
Now, for
Funniest
Lord of the
shit
Rings,
I've ever seen.
guys, if you haven't seen these movies by now, like, what are you doing with your life?
I had someone on Twitter be like, hey, be considerate. I did a spoiler.
Reconsider it?
Yeah, I did a spoiler. I'm like, hey, is this a spoiler for Lord of the
No.
Rings? And I was like, someone was like, hey, this is a 17-year-old movie. And I'm like, and a 60-year-old book. And they're like, well, just be considerate, okay?
No.
was like,
listen.
no.
I totally see
angry.
that. I hate spoilers, okay? I hate spoilers. But that's why when something has come out and I don't want it spoiled, I don't go on social media when it's just released. This is, you've
Dude,
had 17 years.
At this point, it's not even about social media. On your Android phone, you swipe left to go to your news feed, and it's just like,
Yeah,
why
that's
is
the worst.
blank blank
Yeah.
dead in WandaVision? You're like, what? A headline.
The Mandalorian season finale was
Yeah,
spoiled for me just because of a
totally.
notification popped up on my phone, and I looked at it, and it's like, oh, there it is.
Well, and like,
Wow.
main
Yeah.
players were spoiling it on Twitter like days after it happened. I was so mad.
I know. Well, but
Not that it would have mattered.
Twitter's volatile.
It's true.
But
But that's just not fair when like the bleeding dick of spoilers inserts itself into your eyesight. Like it's hello.
Ew, gross
Anyways,
imagery.
spoiler alert.
Yes.
What's up?
All
Today-
that to say, spoiler alert. Don't be mad. Watch the movies.
We're talking about Lord of the Rings, Return of the King. David, what are you giving this movie out of 10?
Rewatching Return of the King for the upteenth time taught me three things. One, I would do anything for Samwise Gamgee. Two, tomatoes are the most disgusting fruit.
Whoa.
And three, that even the most epic of conclusions can have real heart. Looks like feelings are back on the menu, boys. 9.1 out of 10.
Oh, wow.
The thing with Sam is he would do anything for you.
That's
That's why you do anything for him.
anything.
Oh,
a
my
pure soul.
gosh. Okay. So I have a very simple slogan because, guys, this is going to be emotional. My slogan is the crowning achievement of cinema in my lifetime. And I'm giving it a 10 out of 10.
Holy shit.
Because it's like after I finished this rewatch of the movie, I first of all, I was bawling for the last 45 minutes. It was just like there were so many points where it just like hit me right in the feels. And so I don't know if I can give. I obviously can't give this movie I can't attempt to give it an objective rating.
Sure.
So I'm giving it a 10 out of 10, and that 10 out of 10 kind of retroactively applies to the whole franchise.
Oh, wow.
Lord of the Rings trilogy,
It's
because
the best movie franchise.
because this is, I can't think of any other sequence of movies that did things as perfectly as these guys did it. And yeah, I just want to acknowledge that. Okay.
Wow. Okay, so you watched the theatrical cut, hey?
I did. Okay, wait, no, that's a very important point, and we'll get into that. I think if I watched the extended cuts, this would not be the case.
I did watch the extended cuts, and here's my slogan. Return of the King is a too-long bro fest with a few parts that really didn't age well. Better than Two Towers, but worse than Fellowship. 9 out of 10.
Wow.
Don't come at me, guys. 9 out of 10.
It's
No,
so-
no,
9 out of 10.
Honestly, and this is why I think when we go to do these podcasts, I'm like, I'm not watching the extended edition because I want that experience, you know? It's like if I'm going to watch it on my own and I'm like going to be a nerd and like delve into the lore and stuff, like, yeah, I want all those like extra scenes.
I've said it from the beginning. I don't want all those extra scenes. I want
Right.
some of them are just like
There's
so
like
sick.
there's like a mid extended cut that would be perfect for you.
Yeah,
Yeah.
there's Middle Earth. All right, let's get more into that right after this message from our sponsor, Private Internet Access VPN. PIA helps you hide your true IP address so that you can bypass geo restrictions and censorship. You know, in this crazy world,
Just do it.
You can connect up to 10 devices at once, and it includes an internet kill switch.
That's Mount Doom.
Okay, if your VPN gets disconnected involuntarily. PIA is available for Windows, Mac, Android, iOS, and even has a goddamn Chrome extension in the Lothlorien forest. Rohirrim! Check it out at lmg.gg/carpoolcritics.
Oh, Theolingas!
RIP headphone users. That's our only sponsor today, guys. Can we
wanna-
just move right in?
Yeah. I
No,
want to give
David.
a shout out to epic openings that all three of these movies have. I think they did an amazing job taking stuff out of context of the book and then making it work as an intro to a movie.
I actually hate the intro to this one, but
Really?
we'll talk about that after.
I also hate it.
Right after this synopsis.
Oh, synopsis. Okay, yeah, forgot about that. Following their victory at Helm's Deep, Gandalf, Aragorn, Legolas, and Gimli retrieve Merry and Pippin from the now flooded Isengard and return to Edoras to celebrate. Pippin looks into Saruman's captured Palantir, classic fool of a took, leading Gandalf to discover that Sauron will soon attack Gondor's capital, Minas Tirith. Gandalf rides there with Pippin to warn them. Meanwhile, on the way into Mordor, Gollum convinces Frodo that Sam is stealing their food. Believing that Sam desires the ring, Frodo tells him to go home and continues onward with Gollum into the lair of the giant spider Shelob. Frodo escapes and knocks Gollum into a chasm before suddenly being paralyzed by Shelob just as Sam shows up, because he's awesome. He came back. Wielding Sting and the Light of Erendil, Sam drives Shelob away but hides as orcs arrive and take Frodo. Sam eventually follows and discovers that 2 orc factions have mostly killed each other off, allowing him to rescue Frodo, and the two continue their journey. Meanwhile, as King Theoden gathers the Rohirrim, Elrond meets Aragorn to give him Anduril, the reforged sword of his ancestor Elendil. Using the sword, Aragorn recruits an army of dead men cursed to linger on after they broke an oath they swore to Gondor. When Gondor's steward Denethor succumbs to madness over the thought that his 2 sons may be dead, Gandalf is left to defend the city against Mordor's orc army now surrounding Minas Tirith. Just as all hope seems lost, the Rohirrim arrive, turning the tide of battle. Theoden dies, Eowyn kills the Witch King because she's no man, and Aragorn shows up with the dead guys and cleans up the scraps. But Frodo and Sam must succeed, so Aragorn leads the forces of men to Mordor's Black Gate to draw Sauron's attention. Frodo and Sam reach Mount Doom, but Frodo cannot bring himself to throw the ring into the fire. But it doesn't matter because they're attacked by Gollum, who topples over the edge with the ring. Anyway, Sauron and Mount Doom explode, the hobbits are rescued by Deus Ex Eagles, Aragorn is crowned King of Gondor, and the hobbits return home. But Frodo is traumatized and departs with Bilbo, Gandalf, and the last of the elves for the Undying Lands, leaving Sam with Bilbo's books, The Hobbit and The Lord of the Rings, which is like a weird... I always think that's weird. How like the books of these movies exist in the
I think
story.
isn't it actually called the Red Book of Westmarch or something like that?
It's called that, but like together, it's like The Hobbit by Bilbo Baggins and The Lord of the Rings by Frodo Baggins.
Is he talking about himself?
Yeah.
There and back again.
Frodo was so scared. Ooh.
I'm the Lord of the Rings.
Frodo
Sam
looked
said
really
this and
good.
it made Frodo feel weird.
Yeah.
He's just talking in third person.
Little did he know he had an erection the whole time. A bad start. What do you guys want to talk about first?
Well, I want to talk about that opening. You guys don't like it.
Let's talk about the opening.
See, I think it does a good job because that was supposed to be in the second movie. That was supposed to be like a flashback sequence. And I think it works better here where like it just is the start of the movie and then you get right into Gollum stuff. And I think there's some stuff in that sequence that isn't great. Like at the transition to the CGIs always is like, oh.
Okay.
See-
so I like the choice to put it there. I don't like the execution.
Oh, okay.
So I think that it's really like vaudeville, like over the top. It's kind of a tone thing for me. Yeah. Their faces and their reactions is really physical comedy, particularly the actor, not Andy Serkis, but the other guy who plays
Deagle.
Yeah. You got your Smeagol's, your Deagles, your Beagles, your Kegels. Don't forget your Kegels. And
Your Deus Ex Eagles.
so that guy is really I don't know. It's a fine line. Like when you have like Boromir, Sean Bean, or you have Andy Serkis, Gollum looking at the ring and like all the nuance that flashes over their face, and you're just acting, your face reacting is the whole scene. They pull it off, and then this guy doesn't. He's just not a good actor in my mind.
That's totally fair.
But even before that, when they're just in the boat and then he's like catching the fish, he's just like, oh, I got a fish. And it's like, it's just ridiculous. And then Smeagol speaks and his voice is like, and you're just like, what?
Well,
when you're a human, your voice was like that?
Yeah. Well, he wasn't human. He was like basically a
hobbit or whatever, or a hobbit-like creature.
Yeah.
It's just like, okay, I guess we need to hear his voice in a way that's familiar to how he speaks the rest of the trilogy, but it just seemed a little wacky. And
I thought it was,
I don't know.
I feel like I feel the opposite way where I kind of like the execution, but I wish they didn't include it. Like, I thought the scene was okay. I mean, there was some overacting, but you know, like there's overacting in this movie sometimes, although most of the time you don't notice it, it's fine. But yeah, I thought that the scene was okay, but I feel like maybe if this was in the second one, I thought it was just like awkward to start because like this movie isn't about Gollum a lot.
It is.
Gollum is like much more of a secondary character in this movie than he is in The Two Towers. In The Two Towers, we go through this whole journey with him where we discover that he has these two personalities and he's like battling internally about whether he should like be loyal to the hobbits or not. And so like it would make more sense to me to have that characterization be a part of the second movie instead of like slapping it onto the first.
See, why I think it works in this one is
one.
that in the second movie, he starts as a monster and ends kind of as a person. You get this journey of him to this. And in this movie, it's the opposite. He's going to be a bad guy. So you have to have something that like makes him more human.
Exactly. This frames him, right?
Yeah.
You're like, hey, remember Gollum who you started to like? He's a bad guy. Don't forget. And then it gives a sweet, seamless transition into... It goes right into Sam and Frodo.
I guess
and
I would agree with that if the Two Towers didn't end so strongly on Gollum being like a bad guy.
That's true.
Like he goes through that struggle, but he doesn't progress. He ends the movie right off.
I guess though, if you were counting on people watching these movies in a row, that's totally fine. You could get rid of that scene. But I think when there's a year in between, you kind of need to refresh.
Well, you
it.
can't have an origin story unless you kind of know the person first. It's not as interesting.
Yeah.
If you just showed their arc like chronologically, it's not as impactful as like we know a bit about him. Oh, now we've heard of this history. Now we get to actually see it. Totally. It frames us to go right into Mordor after that, into the present day. It just transitions like seamlessly to that. And then Gollum ends up being like the main antagonist for that trio in Mordor. So I like it.
I appreciate the argument that like the separation between the movies of a year, like people coming back into the theater, it kind of like eases you back into the world a little bit. So I'm like, okay, I can see that. But then watching them all back to back.
Okay, I have questions though.
20 years later.
Well, actually, first a statement. When Daigle goes under the water, the CG is so bad.
Yeah.
And then the question is any part of that intro flashback extended versus not extended? Is it? Do you see it all?
I think you see it all because you get like
it's the whole thing.
Yeah, you get the fish going by his head and the hole.
No, I mean like after that, when it shows kind of Smeagol's decline, like it doesn't just end with him looking at the ring and saying, "No, precious."
It goes to, like,
that would be sweet. Instead, it goes to his like
Smeagol,
descent.
I like that part better than I think the happy times.
I can't get into it though because of the makeup. Like it starts off practical, and in between, Smeagol looks brutal. Haggard. There's like layers and layers. Like there's pancakes glued to his face. The makeup is so thick.
And I think it's especially like weird because all of the rest of the makeup and special effects in these movies are so good.
That's so interesting. To me, it didn't read as like poorly applied. It applied as he's fucking ugly.
I tried every time I've seen this scene, I'm like, that looks like a guy wearing a weird thing on his face. But this time I'm kind of like, all right, wait, let's like just forget about for a second and just like try to imagine that this is actually a hobbit that's slowly turning into Gollum. And I kind of got there, but I still couldn't.
That's fair.
Yeah, but did you watch it in 4K? Because when you watch like it's something in 4K, you can kind of just see the makeup if you tune into it.
No, I watched the old version. I didn't watch the 4K remaster.
Yeah, it's not good. I mean, I'm not complaining about all of it. Like the very extreme close up on his gross mouth biting into that fish.
Yeah, that's good.
That's good.
It's bad. It's so like it's great.
Yeah.
It's disgusting.
Disgusting.
It's repulsive. They did a great job of that. It's only when he's like climbing into the caves to escape the sun. That scene is really like I don't like it. And when he transitions from practical to CG, I don't know if his eyes get farther apart, but they morph him at the end.
Well, yeah, they close and then they open, and then instead of having normal human eyes, they're the giant Gollum eyes.
Right.
Yeah,
I think that's a bad.
Yeah, that's just a bad choice because that's never going to be good.
Well, I think it's hard because like I think it's just the whatever trigger that happens in the Uncanny Valley is kind of going on because you're like he's kind of human, kind of not. Like he's too close to human that it. Yeah, just I do get it.
Yeah, that must be a bit of it because when we see Gollum, we're like, that's definitely not a real human, so we can accept it.
I actually want to segue from here to one of the first interactions that sets up the arc, what's going to happen between Frodo and Sam and Gollum in this, because I had some questions about it. I'm talking about the scene where basically it's like Gollum gets closer to Frodo and Sam gets alienated by Frodo in this movie, right?
Right.
And I just don't know if I really buy it. So even before Gollum throws the lembas bread off the cliff, the first conflict is that Sam wakes up and hears Gollum's plan because Gollum's talking to himself in his multiple personalities,
right.
and he hears him plotting. So then he attacks him, which wakes up Frodo, and then it resolves where Frodo tells Sam, "Look, Sam, like I'm on your side. I love you, Sam." But then he like literally holds hands with Gollum and is saying, "We need a guide. We're keeping Gollum around."
Well, he holds hands with him after the lembas bread incident. I don't think he holds hands with him after the like Gollum talking to himself in the pool type thing.
Okay. Well, I might be wrong, but I don't think I am. But it doesn't
They
matter.
hold hands eventually.
It doesn't matter. The point is like, I just don't know because at the beginning I'm kind of like, when Frodo is saying, "I believe in you, Sam," I believe you.
Yeah.
Is he like winking at Sam, kind of saying, yeah, like I know this guy is going to manipulate us and attack us. I know that's what's going on. I'm just not saying that out loud because I'm manipulating Smeagol and I want I want to keep him around him while he's useful. But then it kind of turns out later on that it doesn't seem like that's what's happening at all. That Frodo is just being manipulated.
The way that I thought about it was was that Frodo knows the whole time that Gollum's kind of like he has an ulterior motive. He knows that he wants the ring, and this whole like this relationship that they all have is a relationship of convenience here, where they're like we need things from each other, so we're just like going along for the time being. So I think that like Frodo waking up, seeing Sam like beating up Gollum or whatever because he says that he's gonna murder us or whatever, he's like, that's nothing new, you know. It's like that's like standard. That's been the standard this whole time. So I think that Sam heard that information, and so he's like, I have actual evidence that he's not changed and he is going to try and kill us. But Frodo hasn't heard that, so for him, it's just it's business as usual.
Well, it's interesting because it's like a conflict that is going to happen eventually because they don't. It's not mutually beneficial. It's like they don't each have something that the other wants. Well, they do. It's just that Frodo will never give him the ring. It's like, Gollum, you're never going to get the thing you want. I guess you just want to be like near it and have a chance at killing me.
Right.
So I'll keep you near.
I think the way that Gollum plays it off is that you are the ring bearer and my attachment to the ring
means that you're my master.
That I'm loyal to you. You're my master. So that's how Gollum is playing it off.
Kind of like a cuck position to take.
Shout out to Ben Shapiro.
He's just missing a collar and a leash, and then it's going to get weird, you know?
He does have a leash in the second movie.
He does. Yeah, that's right. The elven rope.
I just want to say also, if anyone was turned off by my usage of that word, I agree with you. I think that's the grossest word. I don't want to say it again. It's the C-U-K word. I think it's the worst C word.
C-U-C-K.
Oh, yeah. That's
that's
right.
probably why you don't like it. You missed one of them.
Oh, yeah, that's right. Yeah. No.
I want to talk a little bit about the sense of desperation in this movie, staying kind of at the beginning, sort of, where we come in with Frodo and Sam, and they, like, things seem bleak, you know, like that scene where Sam is rationing out the limbus bread and trying to figure out whether they have enough for the journey home. And then the audience, you know, we kind of see this reaction on Frodo's face and this realization that he's like, oh my gosh, Sam, you are an idiot. Or not an idiot, but he's like,
naive.
Oh, man, you have yet to confront the reality that we're not going home.
And that's kind of like his arc too, because later on he says we're not going back.
Right.
There's no going home.
Oh yeah, later, and then later Sam discovers that as well. And I think that like there are various points in this movie that like things feel bleak. Like in the previous movies, you know, they're getting attacked by orcs or whatever. Like there are stakes, things seem dangerous, but there isn't the sense that like we could actually lose. And I think that this movie is just infused with so many moments where you're just like, if you haven't seen the movie yet, I mean, if you're looking at it from like a you know, beyond the fourth wall type of perspective, you're like, they're probably gonna win. But if you're just like fully embedded in the movie and immersed, the movie makes it easy for you to believe that things are as dire as they could be, and things are bad.
And how much does Mordor suck? I like that it is 180 degrees from the hyper-real, saturated green, like Pantanal kind of paradise of the Shire, which is just, you know, it is like it's supposed to be like a paradisiacal like archetype of the West and in England, right? And then now they're in this like razor-bladed hellscape that is always dark. Like when Frodo wakes up and Sam's like, oh, it's not midday yet. Yeah. Or maybe it's the opposite. Sam wakes up. It's like, dude, you guys are just sleeping until like whatever time because it doesn't matter because it looks the same all the time and it just smells like sulfur there and it just sucks.
I didn't realize because like there's always the argument of like, why didn't they just fly the eagles in? And there's lots of reasons why they didn't. But there's actually like a mystical darkness in Mordor that keeps things dark. Like it's like actually like a veil. So like, you can't fly in. So
I thought it was like spewing from the volcano.
It's probably part of that, but like that's part of why the eagles can't fly in is that like they just wouldn't see.
I just thought they didn't really care and they're doing their own thing.
No. It's because like the eye of Sauron would see them
and also
stop
maybe they
them
get shot down or something.
Yeah, the orcs are very good archers, even though they're not great in this movie.
You know, I thought that was a huge plot hole until just now. Nice job. Thanks, David. Wow, it's an 11 out of 10 for me now.
Hell yeah. See, I think this is actually my least favorite movie, and I think I kind of disagree with you on the sense of desperation. I think Two Towers has the moment of the battle in Helm's Deep, and that feels like this might be a battle that we lose. Whereas here, I feel like I think you're right. Like the lembas bread scene is a good scene when they kick Sam away. You're like, oh, this is really bad.
Yep.
But in terms of like epic battles, like the Aragorn stuff, it never feels as like as dire. Yeah, especially
really?
for Aragorn. I find all the stuff around him kind of sucks.
I mean,
that's way too strong of a word.
Aragorn doesn't really fight that much in this movie.
He shows up with like, it's not a Deus Ex Machina because it's built up and he spends a long time getting it and it doesn't end the movie, but like he just shows up with this totally imba army of ghosts who just like, and man, why did you release them from their oath so early?
Well, that's why Gimli says that line, is that Peter Jackson knew that the audience would be like, why not just use them for the next battle?
All the way to the volcano, guys, let's go.
Yeah, it was a little bit weird. But I find like that moment. The first time I watched the movie, I remember very specifically being like, this is pretty sick, when he like jumps off the boat and they laugh at him and then all the army comes out. But now I'm just like, it's not nearly as good as Helm's Deep. Like the Rohirrim cresting the hill.
I think I would probably agree with you that like in terms of Aragorn, things are kind of not so interesting because they barely do anything in this
his
movie.
arc's complete already.
Two Towers is like a action movie with Aragorn, Legolas, and Gimli just like kicking ass at different points. And in this one, you know, they go get the army of the dead, and from then on, it's like there's some battle sequences. Legolas takes down an Oliphant with goofy CGI, just like in...
But wait, I want to talk about that, but can we just pause? Because David actually highlighted something that was very particular, that was interesting. The way that you compared Aragorn showing up with the ghost army, you compared it to the mounted
Rohirrim.
cavalry showing up in the morning when Gandalf arrives, right? That comparison I heard in a lecture series from sci-fi high fantasy author Brandon Sanderson. He specifically gave that same example, and the framing he was giving was, why is it that every time Gandalf shows up on that 5th day or the morning of the 3rd day or whatever it is, I like cry and I love that moment, but when Aragorn shows up with his ghost army, I don't really care. What is the difference? And the difference that his explanation was that it was because you were told earlier in the movie in Two Towers, look for me on the 3rd day, I'm going to be there. And then you get to this extreme low point, and then the promise is delivered. And that's when they show up. Whereas no one really knows what Aragorn's going to do. And then he does show up and kicks ass, but I don't know, we're just not expecting it. Or some kind of expectations delivery kind of thing just changes psychologically where we don't care as much.
Well, and like I think that one of the things that this whole series does really well is it makes each beat in a battle very clear what's happening and what's changing due to the thing that just happened. So like when people show up at a battle, you understand, okay, this is going to change the title battle this way. Oh, the elephant just showed up. It's going to change the battle this way. But I find that one feels so separate from what the rest of the battle is going on, where it's just like, okay, yeah, he's kind of at the back and like he's going to start storming them and like, okay, yeah, sure. But it doesn't feel like it's changing it. And then on top of that, we talked about it last time where at that moment of the Rohirrim coming, that's like after like 11 negative beats, and then it's like 11 positive beats. This one
You're talking about in Two Towers.
In Two Towers. Yeah. And then in this, I was noticing it's like a little bit up and down. And like there's some victories right before that happens. Like you have Eowyn starting to kind of have her like rise back up. And so it's like it's part of the rise back up, but it's not
a singular
like,
swing
we're
of the tide.
Totally turning this.
It's also imagery wise. It's not like there's no like tiny like 8-year-old boy singing like choir like like coming with this light and shining a light on the darkness. It's just not the same.
Okay, so I got to push back on this a little bit. So I don't know how much stuff they added for like the battle sequences, like the Minas Tirith battle in the extended version or whatever. But like I remember that the trolls just broke through the gate, and so like that's a huge moment of desperation because they start attacking the city. Towers are crumbling, people are getting crushed by rubble and stuff, and they think that they're doing okay, but then the orcs kind of bring in Grond, the big ram, and they break through the gate, and you think that orcs are going to come through, but no, it's freaking armored trolls, and it's like, what can we do against these guys? They completely get trashed. They get they have to retreat back to the 2nd level.
Yeah, and at that moment you see townspeople. You see women like holding babies who are crying.
And Pippin is in there like crying, like screaming, like, well, he's not screaming, but he's looking around at people screaming and being like, this is freaking, all hope is lost.
But that's when the Rohirrim show up, right? And that's like 30 beats before Aragorn shows up. Like there's a
yeah.
whole other battle sequence that happens, and like I think that's a better moment when King Theoden rides his horse ahead of them and like hits their spears.
Honestly,
that's sick.
I'm placing so little importance on the Aragorn thing. Like I agree with you that that's a weakness, that Aragorn is one of the main characters for us in this franchise, and his big moment of showing up is kind of like, it's mostly one already, seems like.
Yeah.
So that's a big weakness, 100%. But to me, I had experienced such emotional highs from the Rohirrim showing up, and like Theoden's, he's just like, yeah, a sword day, a red day, ere the sun rises, ride now for ruin, and the world's ending. And then he just like screams death 3 times. Yeah. Forth Eorlingas! And I'm just like crying at this point, man. And I think that moment is just so beautiful because it's like, because I felt the desperation from the previous scene, like ignore Aragorn coming in with the dead people for a second, because I felt such desperation from this battle, and you have riders rushing headlong towards what is certainly their death because it's the right thing to do.
I love that. It's greater than themselves, right? It's a really World War I and II vibe.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. And you see the faces of the orcs. The orc captain earlier in the movie, he talks about fear and how fear is the way to do or whatever. I forget exactly what he says, but he talks about fear. And then as the Rohirrim are rushing towards them, the orcs kind of go from confidence, being like, we got these guys. Yeah. The age of men is over. It's the age of the orc. And you see it in their faces turn from confidence to fear. And it's just such a great moment.
I agree. And like, it's hard just scaling up. Like I praised Two Towers for how it scales up this, and I think this one, it gets a little too out of hand, just slightly. And I think like there's a bit of an over-reliance on CG in the fights, and then I think like the fight, just like the whole stakes of each part of it become a little unclear, where you're like, okay, they breached the gate, there's the Rohirrim here, there's Aragorn over there, and you're like, well, we spent 20 minutes with these people over here, what's happening actually at the gates? Like, have they backed off, have they done this?
Right.
And like, it doesn't matter because like in the scale of the battle, it doesn't matter. The Rohirrim and Aragorn are going to win the fight. But in terms of like an emotional investment, you're just like, oh, like, okay.
I think it shows pretty clearly that the Rohirrim like rout the whole army basically. Like the orcs are gone after that. And then they're basically just fighting the Oliphants after they come. So it's like the Rohirrim get the orcs out of there, and they're like, sweet, we won. But then it's like brings you back down again because it's like, oh shit, the Oliphants are here. Yeah. The Haridrim. That's what they're called. Yeah. And so then that is another moment of desperation where we're like, oh, geez, the Rohirrim just saved the day, but are the Rohirrim going to be knocked out by these freaking Oliphants now? Yeah.
Can we talk about Eowyn?
Sure.
Like you were talking, she's adjacent to this conversation.
Yeah, sort of. We rewind a bit.
She starts kicking ass. And I remember as a child, I did see like the 1978's animated Lord of the Rings. Have you guys seen it?
Yeah.
I saw some of it.
And I remember reading the book, even though I read that as a child. I remember she pulls off her helmet and she just says, "I'm no man," and then she chops the guy's head off. I knew at least those beats. And then when it happened in this movie, I remember being in the theater as a teenager and being disappointed with that scene.
Really?
And I'm still to this day disappointed by
really?
it. Yes.
I think it's so sick. I feel it. I feel like that's a good moment of desperation.
Totally.
I think like the fight choreography could be a little bit better, like how she kind of wins it. But
I agree. I don't like the choreography that much, but I think the bigger problem is that I don't believe that she can do it.
Do what?
Kick any ass.
Well, we haven't really seen her do anything.
Hold on. Does she fight anyone except the Witch King?
Well, yeah, she fights her way up to it. She kicks a lot of ass in the battle against normal orcs.
I believe that.
Okay, so I didn't really see. I mean, she's part of the charge in the non-extended version. I don't know, but I don't think that. Like, she's like slicing orcs from her horse or whatever, but I don't think there's really a moment in the non-extended version where she like takes on a bunch of orcs.
No.
In what we saw and what I watched, she is better than all the other soldiers.
Oh,
like,
okay.
She's kicking a lot of ass.
That's weird. So they took that out of the theatrical.
It's totally unearned, though.
Yeah.
It's so unearned.
Why?
Because in the last two movies, all we get is in Two Towers, she like locks swords with Aragorn in like a ceremonial kind of like dancing way. And then she doesn't get to fight at all in Helm's Deep.
Yeah.
She just like, and all she says is, "I want to fight. I have a warrior spirit. I would love to fight." And then Eomer, her brother, tells her in this movie, "You know nothing of war. So like, you're inexperienced. So basically she just wants to fight, but never really has. Then she finally gets to war and she kicks total ass.
Well, okay. I feel like if you're looking at it as like her being proficient in battle is the arc, then that makes sense to me. But I think that the indication that we get in Two Towers is that she has trained, that she knows how to wield a sword. You know, she can fight.
But training is so different from war.
Well, sure, but I guess the arc for me isn't that. It's her struggling to be a part of it. So like for me, she fulfills her arc because she goes from being this woman in the court or whatever, and like people are telling her that she can't do what she wants to do. Aragorn's like gives her a little bit of validation, and that kind of like gives her some spirit. And when the Rohirrim ride off, even though her father just told her to stay where you are, she's like, no, I'm doing it. She suits up. She grabs Merry, who also had the same problem.
Isn't Theoden her uncle?
Oh, yeah, you're right. Sorry,
anyway.
my bad. She grabs Merry, who had the same issue, and they both ride into battle to protect their friends, which is the thing that they really wanted to do. And for me, it wasn't like, oh, how is she fighting? We've never seen her fight. We don't know she can fight. But it's like, I just assumed that she had skills.
Sure, but then they should just participate in some small way. Like taking down, like the Star Wars equivalent of like taking down an AT-AT or something like that.
Well, but
like take down an Oliphant and it's like, cool, look at, they're battling and they're making a difference. But taking down the frickin' sub-boss, the Witch King, the guy who just like looked at Gandalf and blew up his staff.
Yeah.
Which I guess you didn't see in the theatrical version.
I did. I mean, I've seen that, but it's
like,
not in the theatrical.
The most powerful thing ever, she just like beheads this Nazgul and then stabs this guy in the face. It's like,
it is a bit
okay.
It definitely seems a bit strange that he should be able to be killed so easily.
Here's what I need. I need her in the Two Towers in Helm's Deep to kick some ass. I need her to slay someone.
Yeah, the wargs attack
in the previous movie. So if you look at the trailer of Two Towers, there is a trailer where she draws a sword against an orc. Does not appear in either film.
Oh, interesting.
I needed that.
So, but why do you need that? Because
then it's demonstrated that she is competent. It's not just heart.
Okay,
it's also skill.
But I guess I don't know. Maybe that's just. I thought that she was competent from the get-go.
I just don't believe it because
she's training.
But her whole thing is whiny. Her whole demeanor is whininess, being like, I love him, but he's not here.
Dude,
I want to fight, but I cannot.
I think that's just your like male.
No, it's not, because
dude.
in the 1970s one, she's more badass. She has a more powerful voice, and you can watch on YouTube.
Hey.
You can click onto YouTube, type in Eowyn kills Witch King. You can watch that sequence from the cartoon, and she's way more badass, man. She pulls her helmet off and her hair flows, and she's like, I am no man. And she goes down. It's like fucking the same thing. Slashes him across the face. His head explodes.
I wonder if
this
it's
is
part
where-
of the rewrites, though. Because like originally, when it was a condensed movie, it was going to be Arwen is basically Eowyn and Arwen combined. And it was going to be Arwen that did that. And so when they returned it to as it should be 3 movies, then they put it back to Eowyn.
That would have been
But
wild.
I wonder if there's just like something was lost in like the decompressing.
I will
I think they're just
agree
trying
with
to
you.
get too many things out of one character.
I will agree with you that it would have been cooler to have that, but I don't think that the movie necessarily suffers because it's not there, because I felt that the movie tells you that she's confident because she's training and she disarms Aragorn. So it's like a moment where it's like, hey, she's not just a girl, she knows how to fight. So it's like, I don't need to see her fighting to know that because they've told us already. But fair enough, it would be cool.
This
you guys
is
are
too small of a sticking point.
If
for how long
if
we're
anyone's on the
talking
fence,
about
go to YouTube,
Okay,
watch
but-
the cartoon. You'll be like, wow.
Yeah, I can
so
agree
then
with that.
the actual scene itself, we've talked before about how the like I'm no man thing is pretty cheesy.
I love it.
I love it also.
Yeah.
I love that this story from like when was it written? 60s?
Yep. Or it was
No, way
published in-
earlier than that.
No, it was published in 56.
Yeah, 50, 60s?
Yeah, 56, I think.
5060?
54?
In the future?
54.
This story from like way back when like these gender stereotypes were like super strong has this like basically feminist subplot.
I also like how it's a fantasy loophole. Like, because in the cartoon one, the dialogue is much closer to the book. They're speaking like the book a lot more. It's not as modernized.
Yeah.
And the Witch King says something, don't you know the prophecy? I cannot be killed by any living man.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
then, so it's like, haha, well, gotcha.
Yeah. I love it.
I ain't a man. He's like, no!
Them's the rules.
Well, and I like too that like she doesn't win just because she has good heart. She wins because she brought Merry.
Yes.
And he's able to get like the blow that gets him stumbled so that she's able to finally do it. And like that all works.
Don't
That-
sleep
that
on
works.
short kings.
Yeah. Sleep well, king. I don't know what the expression is.
And I also, one more thing about that, I just thought that is the completion of her arc where she defeats the Witch King Theoden sees her do that, and she gets that validation from him, and so then she's like, I'm validated. I am a warrior.
But then it gets weird, and the movie just acts like she's dead for a bit, and I was like, wait, is she dead?
I mean, that's the end of her arc.
It
We
could
don't
be
really
like
need
a
to see her.
cutting thing with the extended and not.
She starts dating Faramir.
That's all good. No, but like, do you know what I'm saying? Like, there's a
No.
part where they go and they're like looking for her body or something like
What?
that, or they're trying to get her to resuscitate her. I'm like, wait, when did it show that she died? Like, she has.
When Aylmer goes and like cries over her.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I'm like,
yeah.
why is he crying over? We didn't see her like fall down and be
yeah.
like, oh, I'm really tired, I need to
Oh,
rest.
that's
we
an
didn't see her
extended
get
scene.
struck down. We see nothing.
Yeah,
She
yeah.
just-
Well, we saw her arm gets broken.
But that's not enough in a movie to be like putting you out.
She
No,
just
I
kind of
remember now that-
disappears, and then
yeah.
I'm like, did I miss something? Kind of confusing.
I mean, I think that maybe it took some of her life energy or something.
I
don't
found
know.
that in this movie, the extended scenes are more kind of, they're put back in a more sloppy way.
Yeah.
There's a few where I'm like, that was a bad cut. The Witch King confrontation with Gandalf when he pretty badass and he puts his sword skyward and lights on fire and then he breaks Gandalf's staff. It's like, whoa. But the in and out point from that scene is really unnatural. Same goes for when Aragorn uses the Palantir. That's extended, hey?
Aragorn used the Palantir. Yeah, that is. Yeah.
That's so weird that you don't get to see that, but I guess it's because what he sees in the Palantir is all Arwen stuff, and a lot of the Arwen stuff is extended.
Yeah. Why doesn't Sauron see him in the Palantir?
He does. He picks up the Palantir
Okay.
and he confronts Sauron and he holds up the sword and he's like, "Look
Oh,
who's
yeah.
back, motherfucker!" And then, like his face is so cool. And he's like, "Yeah, return to the king, bitch."
Coming for you, man.
But then Sauron's like, "That's very cool. Now here's your love dying." And he's like, "Ah!" And then it just kind of cuts out of there. I think it goes right from there to him on the battlefield.
That's so interesting. So about the Eowyn battle, do you guys know that was all reshoots? Because they designed the Witch King wrong and he just looked like Sauron. And
Oh,
all
really?
the test audiences were like, oh, why is Sauron here?
Really?
And so they had to reshoot it all. They brought it back and like they made it work.
Different helmet? Is that what the problem was?
Yeah, that's so it's like now he has the spiky helmet instead of like the.
That's so funny. I liked
but then,
his spiky helmet.
Did you know that Aragorn actually fought Sauron originally? Like they have a fight
In what?
at the final showdown at the gates of
But are you talking about in the book or in the
No, in the movie.
Oh, they
So
filmed
they
a fight.
filmed a fight with Sauron and Aragorn. So basically, like when he goes and they're going to try and distract Sauron so that Frodo can go, instead of him fighting a troll, he's fighting Sauron, and they superimposed the troll on top of Sauron.
really?
Yeah, they just reused that footage, and they're like, because like it kind of makes sense in terms of his arc. Like this is the final confrontation. He's had that moment where he's talking to him in the Palantir. Like this is it. This is Aragorn like fighting evil. It's like a mirror image to Isildur fighting Sauron. Like
Yeah.
all that stuff works, but apparently they just said like it felt kind of wrong, and so they just made it a troll.
You know what's so funny? I was thinking in that moment, I'm like, this is kind of weird. Like, why is he?
Yeah.
It's like, it felt kind of contrived to have Aragorn, like, at that same moment, we're flicking back and forth between Frodo and Sam and Mount Doom and the battle at the Black Gate, and it's a really low moment. Frodo and I think at that point Frodo's struggling with Gollum or something. I can't
remember the exact.
I think Gollum and Frodo are like physically struggling at that point, and then Aragorn is fighting this troll, and I'm like, this feels kind of contrived to like give Aragorn and these guys like a similar sort of moment of desperation. Like things seem bad. Uh-oh, is Aragorn gonna die? And the thing that saves Aragorn is the ring gets destroyed,
yeah.
and so then all the orcs are like, oh, we have to run. So yeah, no,
So that would have been a death blow about to be dealt
Yeah.
to Aragorn, but then when the ring is destroyed, Sauron's distracted or weakened, and then Aragorn would have killed him or something
Yeah.
like that.
You know what?
Yeah,
Do you
maybe.
know if it's possible, if you know that fact and you watch that scene, is it
That scene exists on YouTube.
You can watch it?
You can watch it. It's shit quality,
Oh.
but you can see like Sauron's arm and shit.
because there's
and-
like less special effects and whatnot.
I'm not sure exactly how they got it, but it's like
I was going to say we should
240p.
petition, like it's sad that all these alternate things are just archived somewhere like Rosebud or just
Yeah.
on a shelf. It'd be cool if you could just watch all that stuff. Like
I
I want to
love
watch like Cillian Murphy's dressed up as Batman, like giving his audition footage.
yeah.
Like I wish that was just all available. That'd be cool.
Yeah, yeah.
But what I wanted to know is if you watch this scene with Aragorn versus the troll, and you watch like his eye line, is it clear that he's fighting, the actor was acting for a differently shaped being than he's actually fighting in the final film?
I don't know. That
Well,
I found
Sauron
that,
is like huge,
He's-
so
but he's
he's
not
still,
like
like-
30 feet. He's like 15 feet, right?
he seemed pretty big. I don't know. I wouldn't be surprised. He's probably a little shorter than a troll, but still like pretty,
Yeah,
But different
really tall.
proportions still. Like trolls are like such wide backs and hunched
Yeah,
over.
but I think that's why they could superimpose him because
something bigger.
So much bigger.
he's a thick troll with two C's.
Yeah, it always felt like a weird scene. Him like like fighting, like dueling a troll. Like that doesn't seem like how you would deal with a troll.
Yeah, it felt weird that Aragorn could just like block his strikes.
Yeah, it's like, no,
but I
there's
was
so
like,
much force.
I don't know, maybe he's a Dunedain, he's got the blood
doesn't
of
matter.
kings. I don't know.
But it's so interesting. The more I thought about it, the more I'm like, I want that ending. I want him to like come face to face with Sauron.
Oh, really?
I wonder if it just takes off a lot of the pressure on Frodo, because like, what are the stakes for Frodo then when he's like right beside the eye? Like, the danger is so immediate.
Yeah, it's true. And like,
because if Sauron's not in there, then it's just like, well, it's just him in the landscape.
Yeah, and it's like, is it actually Sauron, or is it like a projection, and you have to set it up? Yeah,
I think I think I can see this. Like, I can see how maybe that scene would have been, because it does feel a bit weird that we are so concerned about this battle at the Black Gate while the real important thing is happening in Mount Doom. I feel like maybe if the stakes, because I didn't really feel like Aragorn was going to die. It's like, it's a troll. There's a whole army there. Like, someone's going to save him. Legolas is going to come in and 3 arrow him in the throat or something. I feel like if Aragorn, somehow had to face off with Sauron by himself or something, and then we really do feel like Aragorn is in danger and he might die, it's like, okay, there are 2 stakes going on. Like, hopefully Frodo and Sam destroy the ring, but like maybe they destroy the ring and Aragorn dies. Like, we don't want that. So like there would be stakes there. That might be cool.
It doesn't make sense for Sauron to become embodied again.
Yeah.
Without possessing the ring, because that removes all the power of the ring. The whole reason, the whole story is based on if he gets the ring, he can be powerful again.
There's that lore version.
That's fair.
There lore reason, and I also like it better. I like Sauron better as this sort of like disembodied, abstract idea of evil, instead of like, he's a guy who we can punch. Like,
sort of. I guess like it also kind of makes it that his like threat is more vague.
Right.
Like if you get the prequel in the first one where he's swinging left, right, and like taking out 30 dudes per swing.
Yeah.
And it'd be cool if at the end of this movie, at the climax battle, you get a little bit of that where you're like, oh, the humans are doing okay, like they're defending themselves, and then all of a sudden Sauron shows up and he's just like, boom.
Yeah.
It would be cool.
I don't know.
I probably wouldn't hate it, but I think I agree with their decision.
That's fair.
I agree with their decision too.
What the hell happens when he gets the ring? You bring the ring.
Sauron?
You bring the ring to Barad-dûr. You hold it up to the eye. And then what happens?
I feel like maybe he like has the strength now to incorporate a physical body or something. I don't know.
Maybe the ring becomes a body and he's just like golden man walking around.
Maybe he hadn't thought about it. Like they bring it to him and he's like,
oh shit.
He's like the Michelin man made out of a bunch of rings.
That's super nut. Did you guys find Pippin too annoying at the beginning of this one?
At the very beginning, I don't.
When they're talking about the salted pork and stuff?
No. Like the Palantir.
I actually, this is another thing.
Palantir?
There's 3 things in this movie, 3 interactions in this movie where I'm like thinking it goes one way and it goes a different way. And we already discussed one, which is the Sam and Gollum one. Mm-hmm. The other one of the other ones is this, where at first the Palantir falls in the water and Gandalf takes it from Pippin and glares at Pippin and is like, you're such an idiot. And then the next scene is they're at a bar or pub, and he's Pippin.
They're at Edoras.
Dancing.
Celebrating,
yeah, a pub. The Great Hall.
It's the Great King Hall. Yeah.
They're celebrating. It's a thatched barn, like Sauron.
Hey guys, you want to go to a pub?
Saruman's so savage, man. But anyway, he's celebrating, and then again, he catches the gaze of Gandalf, and he kind of like feels self-conscious for being like, "Oh, I'm dancing on the table." Gandalf thinks I'm like such a twit.
Oh, they have that shot. That shot is in theatrical.
Oh, okay. And then so at that point, I'm thinking, what is Pippin's arc here that he wants to be considered as more than just like a joke in Gandalf's eyes? Like he wants to become something. But then that's totally undone by the Palantir scene where it's like, oh, actually, the look I had earlier is because I want to hold the Palantir more. I was like, oh, okay. So he kind of has a different arc after that point.
I feel like his arc in the last movie, it wasn't like a big arc, but he has that moment at the end where he's like, oh, I'm going to take this seriously, sacrifice my safety in getting the Ents into the war and like doing this great noble act. And then it just feels like it's like like they started a new season of a TV show and they have to like reset him and like have him kind of do the same. And then he arrives at a place that's really powerful. And I think like his arc is really good in this movie. But when I feel like he's just retreading a lot of the same steps, I'm like, oh.
I think that Pippin, the hobbits in general are a silly folk. But Pippin is the silliest. And I think that in Two Towers, Merry, pretty much from the get-go, as soon as they, meet the Ents, Merry is like, "Hey, sweet, you guys got to help," and he's like he's in it. He has a little arc where he kind of gets, he despairs a little bit, and then that's where Pippin comes in and been like, "Hey, wait, try doing this over here." But I think in Pippin's mind, still, it's sort of like a game. Like Merry is like, "This is real stakes, and we really need to do this," and Pippin is still kind of just like having fun, and he thinks it's like, "Oh, we can trick Treebeard in this way," and he thinks, "Oh, I helped, great."
Yeah.
And then they beat Sauron. They're hanging out at Isengard. They're munching on salted pork, smoking pipe weed.
Pippin's having a great that scene.
Pippin's having a great time, and then in his mind, he's like, "Sweet, we won. The stakes are gone," And so I think that it made sense to me that Pippin. It's not so much of a reset as it is like Pippin thinks it's a reset, and he's like, fair. "Sweet, we won."
Yep. I just really hate when they're acting drunk and stoned, when they're like, "Oh, we got the salted pork." Like,
you don't like that?
Like, again, I don't like the tone. They're kind of overact. It's hard to act drunk.
How much do you love the Legolas and Gimli drinking game?
I hate all of that,
Yeah,
man.
That's not in theatrical.
That's just extended, yeah.
Oh, yeah. Like, I don't mind Legolas looking at his fingertips and being like, "I think it's affecting me." But Gimli just like being cross-eyed and stuff, I'm just like, this
Honestly,
is so
at the end, he
brutal.
says, "Game over." And you're like, excuse me, what did you say, Legolas?
High score.
High score, motherfucker.
Man, the more we talk about this, the more I wish you guys watched the theatrical version, because I've seen both many times. We had the extended editions at my house, and like, I chose to watch the theatrical version this time because I know that as a movie viewing experience, like wanting to sit down and like get immersed, like really think about the themes and the characters and all that stuff, I think that the theatrical is just better. It's just better.
Much slicker.
And once you've had that experience, then you can go back and watch the extended. I know you guys have watched it before, but I think that like the best way to experience the extended versions is like having that experience of the theatrical versions 1 to 3, and then like give it a little bit of time, and then go back and watch the extended versions.
I 100% agree.
Because like then there's not so much stakes for you to have this cool experience.
I think you should actually know the theatricals well enough that when an extended scene comes on, you're like, extended.
But I think even for that, it breaks the flow a little bit. A lot of these extended scenes, as you're saying, they're just kind of weird. It's like, why are those there? They break the flow,
Do you know what's extended and what's not for the Gondor scenes with Denethor?
I don't know. The way that I'm remembering which are extended scenes or not is when you guys describe something that happened, and I'm like, I didn't see that.
This is actually, that's the third moment in the movie where I was like, is it this? And by the end of the scene, I'm like, oh, it's that. And but I came full circle on this, so let me take you on a journey.
Okay.
So we get Gandalf going up to the steward of Gondor, Denethor, and he sits on that throne beside the real throne, right?
Yeah, cool
and
image.
At first, he's basically saying, Denethor is saying, I'm not going to give up my throne, my stewardship, because Aragorn is coming from some like his house that he's coming from sucks, like house as in like lineage.
Or some line long bereft of lordship.
Yeah, some ranger from the north, right? And at that point, I'm thinking, okay, either he's just like a power hungry dude and he just wants to stay in power, totally natural, or it's totally plausible and respectable, and I think a little more nuanced if he was totally willing to yield the throne and agree to a peaceful transfer of power, okay? But he won't do that if he doesn't think that the new king is legitimate.
Right.
He actually thinks that Aragorn is a bad leader and doesn't deserve it, and he couldn't do what he's doing there. And I think that would be really cool, and that's realistic, and in real life, that's... people don't see themselves as evil in real life.
Totally.
People who are like storming the Capitol building and stuff, they think that the rules have been broken.
Yeah.
And that the other position isn't legitimate. So they're doing things their own way. So I can get behind Denethor thinking that. And halfway through that scene, that's what I'm thinking. Maybe he just doesn't think that Aragorn's legitimate, and therefore he should hold on to the throne because that's his duty as the steward of Gondor is to protect it from despots or whatever, demagogues. But then by the end of the scene, he's just yelling at Gandalf, like, only I can tear this throne. Me. I'm like, and I thought that was kind of lame until I realized that is necessary, because one of the major themes in this movie is hope versus despair. And he has despaired.
Totally.
He can't be both. He could not be the steward who is doing his duty and looking out for Gondor while simultaneously having had despaired and given up and lit himself on fire and ran off the edge.
Yeah, and that's the thing about Lord of the Rings. I feel like if this was a different movie series, I would be watching this and be upset. It annoyed me a little that Denethor was as much of a caricature as he is. Like, he doesn't seem like a real person. Like, the only way to justify his actions is that he's lost his mind completely.
Yeah, or black magic or something.
Yeah, or something, or Sauron got hold of his brain or something, you know? And he really bugs me in this movie. I think he's a major weakness from a pure storytelling standpoint, but I think that because Lord of the Rings is so mythological and because it deals with these like grand themes, I can watch this and be like, okay, this is like if I'm reading a Greek mythology story and I'm like, that's not what a person would do.
But he's an archetype.
Yeah, he's an archetype. Yeah, he's supposed to represent, as you say, despair.
Did Sauron get to his mind? Because didn't he hint at having...
The Palantir.
Yeah.
Oh, maybe.
Someone commented me or tweeted at me being like, well, yeah, of course his mind would be all messed up because he's been using the Palantir to doom scroll forever.
So, whoa, is that in the extended?
I don't know.
He says something, he reveals some information, then Gandalf's like, how do you know that?
Well, he says, you think the eyes of the White Tower are blind. Does the White Tower have a Palantir? Google!
Google! Yeah, I think that it works in the context of the black and white morality of Lord of the Rings. I think it goes to show how dated of a story Lord of the Rings is, and that's not a bad thing. It's just like we've had so many stories that kind of try and find nuance in these archetypes.
Yeah, like The Last Jedi. Oh, you just got caught in a PC pretzel.
I love The Last Jedi. So, but like, yeah, I just find it interesting that there's all these stories that have elaborated on all these all these like pieces of Lord of the Rings, and they've done it better or evolved it and changed it. But like none of the there's a reason why we're still rewatching Lord of the Rings 20 years later. Like, it's just so pure, so powerful.
Totally.
Dude, we don't have to rewatch it soon. This year, we're going to get the Amazon series.
Oh, gosh.
Which takes place thousands of years before, but has
I
some familiar characters.
I'm not excited.
Gandalf?
Galadriel.
Okay.
Maybe all wrong.
I'm interested in it, but I'm not super stoked.
I'm not excited at all.
I think it's a great choice to remove it from, like, the Peter Jackson Middle Earth and do something very different.
I feel it was always weird to me that they expanded Lord of the Rings into like other areas,
like our media, like video games?
even the fact that there's Lord of the Rings online was kind of weird. I'm
really?
like,
what is that?
Well, because to me it's almost
MMO.
like, yeah, it was an MMO. It was almost like, it's almost like Lord of the Rings is this like. I tweeted recently to this effect about Star Wars. I'm like, maybe we've gotten too crazy about Star Wars. You know, it's like maybe we've gotten too many things, too many Star Wars things, and now no one's going to be happy because nothing is exactly what people want because people have different ideas of what Star Wars is and blah, blah, blah. And I kind of feel that way about Lord of the Rings. I feel that it has been left alone.
To a certain degree.
Yeah, it hasn't been tampered with as much as like Star Wars or Star Trek or whatever has. So it's almost sad to me to see them like being like, oh, Lord of the Rings is a brand that we have the rights to now, and there's a captive audience that would watch our show if we made a show about Lord of the Rings, and that just gives me no confidence.
Well, that's because
the show's going to be good.
You've been burned. You have baggage now from Disney.
Exactly.
They dipped their toe into like unofficial canon with the Shadow games, like the Shadow of War and Shadow of Mordor, or opposite.
Yeah.
Where they were in the Tolkien verse, and they had like Sauron, and they had all Shelob as a sexy lady.
Yeah, I heard things about those games, and that's why I have not played them.
And they were good, and like the story worked in the video game. But
it was a decent video game.
Basically, you kill Sauron and become like the Master of the Ring. Yeah, it's fucked
when
up
I was
shit.
a child, I
That's
thought
not one of the endings.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Sorry, spoiler.
That's not like the canon ending, obviously.
No, and exactly, and like that's why it's just weird. And I mean, I don't think they'll do anything like that with the Amazon show, but
you never know. It depends how successful it is. When I was a kid, I thought more content equals better.
Yeah.
But now it's just like you wish that the rights holder could just be like, this is it for all eternity. You're not allowed to make any more forever.
Well, as an
Just
adult,
bury it.
you kind of have an understanding of what makes things special is restraint sometimes.
Yeah.
So yeah, the idea like there was a news article recently that's just talking about how the Amazon Lord of the Rings show is going to have a bunch of like sex scenes.
Oh
and
yeah,
stuff.
no.
And I was like obviously I have no problem with sex scenes when they're used like to.
I hope they're interspecies.
Hobbits, personal opinion,
orcs.
I don't like when there's just like gratuitous sex scenes for
Yeah.
the purpose of titillation.
Yeah.
Like if it serves some plot purpose, sweet.
Totally
Which
great.
is the same
Yeah.
thing with any scene. If you just have a scene and the whole purpose of that scene is to titillate, I'm like, well, do something more
with
useful
it.
with it. But anyways, Lord of the Rings just seems like special. It seems like, we don't need topless elves. So like, I don't know. I do. I need it. Yeah.
I need
it.
Those eternal titties.
Dude, the internet exists. Just go,
There's
you can
there's a
find
lot.
it.
Rule
I don't need it in
34,
the
bro.
Amazon show. All right.
Yeah.
Okay. Speaking of
We've gone
elves.
on a big
Speaking of
tangent.
elves,
Yeah.
Elrond. Couple things here. First of all, why doesn't he forge the sword together?
What?
What the hell?
What do you mean?
When he's like, okay, we're going to repair the sword that was broken. And then it just cuts to two random elves blacksmithing it. I'm like, why not just cut to Elrond blacksmithing it? It'd be so much better.
Well, I think it's probably a lore thing where it's like he's not.
Yeah, he's not a smith.
Doesn't matter.
No, fans would be like, oh, excuse me, Elrond's blacksmithing is only like a 7 out of 10.
That's just so stupid. They changed tons of stuff. That doesn't
What are you
matter.
talking
They
about?
almost had Sauron as the enemy.
Wait.
like embodied.
Are you saying that originally in the book he forges it?
No, I'm just saying visually, like I would just care way more.
Yeah.
It would be a way better visual. Just like the visual of him when in Fellowship of the Ring, when he's doing that flashback where he says, I was there the day man failed. And
Yeah.
he watches Isildur in the volcano and you see him all sweaty, kind of, lit by the light of the fire, which he would be in this scene.
No.
He looks cool when he's dirty and shit.
Yeah.
It should have just been like, all right, we're going to do this. And it goes to him smashing the sword back together instead
I
of
don't
two
know.
random elves.
Well,
it just
I
made me
agree.
mad. And the person I was watching it with was like, that sucks. And I was like, that's right.
I mean,
So I'm not alone.
while I agree that might have been cool to have Elrond reforge the sword, it's like that. It's not always better to have a character do something just because you want to see that character doing it. Like if you want, Frodo should have flown on the eagles or something. It's like it would be cool to have this character fly the plane instead. But it's like they're not a pilot, so. To me, it makes total sense. Like Elrond.
No, but why can't he? Like I've forged things in
because
high school. Like
he's not a smith.
but he's so magic.
Yeah, we don't necessarily know.
Forging
that
a
he's not
sword
smith.
isn't just like the elves don't have just like magic-y magic stuff that they can just like forge a sword if they have no idea how to do it.
If you were immortal and could live for thousands of years, don't you think by like 3,000 years from now you would probably speak Arabic?
It's not something
and you
that's
would be-
important to him.
No, but okay,
don't-
I think you're going too far into it. Like, would you have believed that Elrond could
No.
have forged? You wouldn't. I
No,
think
because
I would believe that he could forge a sword. There's so much mystery around him.
I feel like even if Elrond has forged a sword before, I think it makes total sense because Elrond, Galadriel, Celeborn, these are like, they're kind of like lords and they have their courts and their minions and stuff. So it's like, why would they go and personally forge the sword if they have people to do that?
Consider this aspect of it. The sword is to some
I
degree,
don't want to talk about this for a long
it's
time.
magical. And I think this is a really cool thing about Lord of the Rings. It's like Isildur had a regular sword. It was just made by a man. But then he used that sword to cut off the finger of Sauron at a momentous moment.
Actually, it's
right?
Elendil's sword, his father.
Okay, whatever. It was a normal sword.
Yeah.
But then after it did this action, now it is imbued with power for some reason. Now
Well-
it's a powerful object. Because we have this in our lives, right? You could have something like, oh, that was the shirt he was wearing during the accident.
Right.
Like now it just, or this location just has weird energy because we know what happened here.
Totally.
You can imbue an object with meaning.
Yeah.
And I think it's really cool that that happens in this movie. This sword, because of its history, now when I show the enemy the sword, people are, oh shit.
No, totally.
It can do it again.
I
It's
think
totally
that's-
illogical.
Well, yeah. I mean, in the world of Lord of the Rings, it makes sense. I feel like I was kind of, I didn't know where you were going there with like it was imbued with a magical energy or whatever, but I think I get what you're saying now because I don't think that, at any point the sword is like imbued with anything, but I think that the fact that it is the sword of the Gondorian kings.
It's like plus 10 charisma.
Yeah, it was the sword of Elendil. It was taken up by Isildur, and now that same sword has been handed down to the heir to the Gondor to the throne, Aragorn. And the simple fact that is true means something to the dead people, whether they know it or not. And I think that kind of goes along with the Lord of the Rings sort of like magic exists and things are. You don't need to like cast a spell on the sword for it to mean something. That meaning that in our world we just like place on things, and that's just like a subjective meaning that we understand.
At the end of the day,
in Lord of the Rings, it's real.
well, At the very least, all it means is like, look, the king of Gondor has the sword. This sword represents my lineage, which I'm a part of, and the king is back.
Yeah, but I'm
at the
saying
very least,
to us, that something representing something is purely abstract and it's not real. It's just we believe that. But in Lord of the Rings, it is real. It's a real force. It's a part of reality.
Yeah, and I just think that would be accentuated, or I believe it even more, if someone who is very powerful in magic, like Elrond, was the one who put it back together.
Yeah. Again, I think it would be cool if Elrond did it, but I think that it makes sense that he didn't.
All right.
And it doesn't really...
I hate you. Let's move on.
I think that the best city design in the entire movie is in this one. I think that Gondor looks so good. I love that it's like
Minas Tirith
slightly...
looks sick.
Minas Tirith, sorry. I love that it's like slightly overexposed. I love like that courtyard with the tree, the fire, like the shot of a Denethor on fire falling off the cliff. It's like the most epic fantasy shot ever, but it's like kind of simple and low stakes, but it's like part of a battle.
Oh, it's awesome.
Yeah,
And like
but that's the one of the thing where it's like, dude, you just ran like 2 football fields on fire. He goes from inside, runs all the way to the door, out the door, and then it's like at least 100 yards.
Do you know Denethor? He's a drama queen. He wants people to remember his death.
Yeah,
I
totally.
like that whole scene is like a little wacky. Like, it's. I guess I just don't understand his motivation of like wanting to burn himself and his son. Like, I get logically that like he's like, the line has ended. Like, I want to die now. I give up. Despair. Like that ties into that theme.
Yeah.
But it doesn't feel.
I think
Doesn't feel real.
I think that, as we said, he's an archetype of despair.
That's fair.
And I did read that apparently there probably was a Palantir in Minas Tirith because there was a Palantir in Minas Ithil, which is the Palantirs weren't always like evil, right? They were like there were four in Middle Earth, and
They're like Facebook Messenger, or they're WhatsApp.
Yeah,
they're WhatsApp.
so there was one in Minas Tirith, there was one in Minas Ithil, and there's one in Isengard, and there was another one somewhere. And the Minas Ithil becomes Minas Morgul because Mordor used to be part of Gondor or whatever. And so there is a Palantir.
That's basically Taiwan.
Yeah.
My last thing about Gondor that I wanted to talk about, because it's like this movie is black and white, and it's all hope and despair living next to each other. Inside of the Gondor keep, the castle, it is all black and white. Everything is like stark black white, like it's accents. And I find like the fact that 3 movies in, they're still using design to tell the story,
right,
shows how much love and passion and work went into this fucking trilogy.
It's great. You can really tell, like, Sauron disses Theoden by saying that the house of Rohan is just like a thatched barn or whatever. That guy's so savage. But you really do get the sense that you're in the 3rd movie. They're finally in Gondor and Minas Tirith, and this is the real human stronghold. They've got stone walls.
Yeah.
I
mean, I did like the contrast between, because the only realm of, well, I guess we have seen Minas Tirith before in the movies, but the contrast is cool in this movie between Rohan, the strength of Rohan, and the strength of Minas Tirith. And it's kind of like, there's different strategies here, because Rohan is made up of all these tiny little villages spread out all over the place, and that's why they're the horse lords, because their strength is in cavalry, and that's how they live their life. And in Gondor, everyone's just like packed into the city with 7 levels, and it's friggin' massive. And so it's
because that landscape is really exposed, right?
Yeah,
they have that one mountain that they're built up against for defense.
Yeah. It's
I mean, Rohan's exposed as well, but
that's different.
We kind of we've gotten a little bit into nitpicks and stuff, but I want to bring it back a little bit and talk about themes again.
Yes,
because
please.
One of the coolest, I don't know, and maybe this is also a big reason why I cry in these movies, because there are such strong themes of brotherhood and friendship. The 2 different sets of best friend hobbits who both reach some sort of they come apart and then they come back together. The trio bonding, the Aragorn, Legolas, and Gimli, that's kind of something that happens over the whole franchise, but they go from being complete strangers to being we're
inseparable. We're coming
brothers.
with you. We're going with you. You can't leave us.
We're a unit. Yeah. And that's really cool. And Aragorn's like, I gotta go. And they're like, we're coming with you, laddie. You might as well accept it. And then the Brotherhood of Gondor and Rohan, which we were kind of just talking about, if we think about them as entities, they used to be allies, and now over time they're just like, they didn't come and save us, and he didn't come and save me.
And how perfect is that? That's exactly what it's like with families.
Totally.
I'm sure almost everyone in the audience has a thing where it's like, my dad hasn't talked to my auntie for 19 years because of this stupid fight over some used car that doesn't matter, but I don't even know my cousin because of that. And it's... Yeah,
totally. I mean, that's sad.
And that's exactly how it is in this movie. It's like, well, they didn't help us at Helm's Deep, and then, well, I'm not going to light the fires.
Yeah, and your friend who's like telling you like, hey, just reach out. They want to be friends again. And the one guy's like, in Two Towers when Aragorn's trying to convince Theoden to call Gondor for aid, and Theoden's like, they're not going to help us. Yeah, like they helped us all those other times. Yeah, right. Blah blah blah.
And what happens? The fire's lit. We're going.
Yeah, and
I love that scene though.
Huge
Like
chill moment.
You don't know that Theoden's gonna say yes. Like everyone kind of gathers around him. They're like Aragorn runs. He's like, the beacons are lit. The beacons are lit.
Gondor calls for aid.
And the amount of silence, the duration of the silence.
Everyone just gets a close up and they look at him and he's like, and we will answer.
Yes,
and you're like, yeah.
You're right. It works so well because we don't know what he's going to say because of everything that he's said up to this point. We assume that he's still mad.
Yeah.
And he's like, and Rohan will answer. Like,
I love that actor,
It's
man.
so good.
Imagine if it just that big silence and it pushes into his face, the zoom, and he's just like, fuck him.
Yeah.
Oh man.
Theoden, gotta say though, Theoden, I love, he's an epic character, and his speech at Pelennor is awesome, but like he has this weird complex about only fighting when the odds seem insurmountable. Like in Helm's Deep, he's like, oh, all hope is lost, and like, don't call Gondor for aid, like we're just gonna die here, and blah, blah, blah. And then they're at the keep, and Aragorn's like, everything's lost. We're doing so badly, but why don't we just ride out one last time? And Theoden's like, yes. Yeah. And then he goes ape shit.
He just wants to be remembered as an epic king.
Same thing happens here when he sees Aragorn leaving, and he doesn't know Aragorn's going to get the dead people.
Yeah.
For some reason, that's one of my big things that I'm like confused about. Why did Aragorn not tell Theoden he was going to go get the dead guys?
That's pretty shitty. And like, even like Gandalf tells like, follow the path of the dead. And it's like, how does he know that he'll have Anduril in time? Because like, he doesn't know that Anduril's being reforged. I mean, like Gandalf's mystical, sure, but
Gandalf's
like,
just hoping.
It's some pretty crazy coincidences that he gets Anduril just in time.
Well, he doesn't need Anduril.
Yeah,
Anduril just a visual evidence.
No, but they would have killed him. The ghost people would have killed him.
I think he did need Anduril, but I think that
couldn't he have just used his words? Couldn't he have just like, this is who I am?
No, because he needs the proof.
He needs the proof.
They're like, unless you have the proof, then you're just some dude. I don't think that Gandalf knew that he would succeed, but I think that part of what makes this series so awesome is the fact that the magic Gandalf isn't operating off of like some vision that he has.
Well,
right?
he's hope.
He's hope, exactly. And we have this, and it's not even good hope. It's not even rational hope. It's a fool's hope. It's
faith.
That scene where Pippin is talking to him. And he's like, is there any hope for Frodo and Sam? And he's like, only a fool's hope. And that's just like the whole movie. It's like everything. It seems like we're gonna lose. There's no point in believing that Frodo and Sam will get this done. There's no point in trying, but we're going to do it anyway. Love it.
It's interesting. How do you think that ties into the rush with like Faramir and his men trying to retake Osgiliath? Like, how does hope and despair play into that?
You could really flip that around.
Yeah. No, like I'm not trying to be like, no, fuck you.
Well, they're doing that because Denethor. Yeah. You're talking about the time where Denethor's like, all right, you already lost Osgiliath. Go try to get it back.
Yeah. They just they rush the field and they get shot down by arrows.
No, that's a good point. It's not hope per se. They're like following a stupid order.
Yeah, and it's interesting because I think this is a extended scene, but there's a part where Gondor gives a big info dump to Pippin.
Denethor?
Pardon me? No.
Denethor gives a big...
Gandalf.
Gandalf. You said Gondor. But continue.
I'm so bad at that. It's because I have the word Gondor like highlighted right on my screen. Gandalf gives the big info dump to Pippin, and he says that Gondor fell into ruin because the rulers did not use the wisdom that the West had gained up to that point. And then they started building lavish tombs for the fallen instead of like focusing on the living.
Right. The kings, the kings with the right bloodline need to come back.
Lesser men.
Problematic, David?
Yeah.
Actually, I would like to talk about that. Or
no, go ahead.
Well, just because one of you, I think you said that there are some problematic or things that didn't age well.
Yeah.
What were you talking about there?
I was talking about the opening scene, like some of the CG.
Oh, okay. I thought you meant like culturally.
No, mostly like again, there's like some weird crossfades where like somebody's in the background, you can like superimposed, like just some cheesy things.
Well,
like that.
I even tweeted about it. I paused a frame and like there's a frame where like the elephant's legs disappear. And it's just like a bad render or something. They didn't have time to redo it.
It's fun. I saw a visual artifact too in the title sequence when it's like we're panning up from the trees and it says "Return of the King." There's like a artifact in the bottom lower right of the. It's like just like a black speck that just goes.
Do you know what I didn't realize is that these movies were a huge mess before they came out. Like, so the first one came out and they were like running out of budget. They were running out of support. Like everything was a mess. and they had shot all 3, and like they were like fucking scrambling, and they reshot tons of this movie. There was like months
Off
and
the
months.
strength of like 13 Oscar nominations
and they're
or
like,
something like
oh,
that.
they're like, yeah, it's worth reinvesting, and they did tons of reshoots and reshaped it and got it to where it is. Thank God. But I had no idea. I would like totally change my mind about reshoots.
Dang, dude.
Doesn't mean a bad thing.
You thought reshoots were what?
Generally a bad thing. It's like,
Yeah.
oh, they didn't nail their movie. They don't really know what they're doing.
I don't hear about reshoots and immediately think that means something bad, but I think that when a movie comes out and you know, and it's like, this was kind of weird, and you know that they did reshoots, it's like,
it doesn't help. Yeah.
Yeah, it doesn't help your overall picture of the movie.
Well, I brought up that the Fields of Pelennor, is that right, where they're rushing towards Osgiliath?
Yeah.
I love that. It's one of the best scenes in the movie when Mary is singing, or Pippin is.
Oh, yeah.
And that
Sorry.
song is so powerful, and like the
it's so
visual,
good.
and like them just.
Is that when Pippin's singing?
Yeah, Pippin. And
Sing me a
they're
song.
slowly kind of realizing it, and like Denethor's eating, and he's like, oh,
Eating's so gross.
Yeah.
Oh, man, I hate that scene.
This series nails the art of the montage. Like, there's so many good montages throughout this series, and like I think that's just like a really strong example. And like it just, every shot adds to the other, and like it's telling this great and close story, but like you feel so much, and you feel this despair, and you feel like torn up about Pippin, and like you're like, fuck, I hate this guy.
The
And, like,
song is so haunting.
so good. Yeah.
Edge of night.
And they included that scene just because they went to karaoke, and they're like, he's pretty singing.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, they
wow.
did?
Yeah,
I
and
thought
they're
you
like,
just
the writers were
making
like,
that
we
up.
better figure out. And then they found the words in the books, and we're like, yeah, we'll make it work.
I love how many little like behind the scenes tidbits you can get from this movie.
Well, those guys lived together for months, right?
Totally.
Yeah, when you watch the behind the scenes, you like, I don't know if you guys have ever been part of a big production for a long time, like in like theater, like in high school or whatever. And it's
sure,
like 3 months, 6 months. And at the end of it, you're like, wow, that was a big chapter of my life. Can you imagine working on something for 3
Oh my
years?
God.
On an island.
On an island. Yeah, your entire life is Lord of the Rings. And at the end of it, it's just over. I understand why Orlando Bloom came back for The Hobbit. I understand because, like,
Yeah.
man, trying to recapture that glory.
Yeah.
But
well,
I praise Viggo Mortensen for
and like
not.
so many of them are still known best for
totally.
for Lord of the Rings.
Even
you know?
like people like Elijah Wood, who had a career after, it's still Frodo.
Yeah. And Elijah Wood is funny because he never really did. He's never really gotten back into like big movies.
No, it's all weird indie stuff.
He does a lot of indie, fun stuff and like TV shows. He's in a freaking Raid Shadow Legends ad. I saw it online. I was like, "What are you doing?"
I totally sympathize with that progression because it's just like, yeah, I've been in the biggest budget thing,
Yeah.
the hugest production. I've done that. Now let's do weird
Yeah,
stuff.
same
Yeah,
with
he's
Daniel
like-
Radcliffe. Is just like
He doesn't
step
ma-
aside.
Doesn't
And
really
also
care much.
your whole identity that you don't want to just be like Frodo or Harry Potter forever. So
Yeah. He doesn't really care much about
Yeah.
like being in the Marvel universe or something.
Yeah,
He's
you
just chilling.
Hear those horror stories from like Leonard Nimoy, and like he just didn't want to be Spock anymore, but he's Spock.
Okay, let's talk about the end where I don't want to talk about Spock. Let's talk about the end where Frodo and Sam are in Mount Doom, and the fact that Frodo fails. The fact that Frodo gets to the end, the hero of the story, well, one of the heroes of the story, gets to the end and like he's about to fulfill his whole mission. The climax of the film, sort of. There's sort of 2 climaxes, but we'll talk about that. And he fails. He goes to drop the ring, and he succumbs to the evil that he's been fighting this entire time. Like, well, how did you guys feel about that?
I think it really works for the drama of the moment. Like, I think the drama is really heightened by that moment of him like, the ring is mine.
Yeah.
And you're like, and Sam, like, no.
Yeah, the
Oh,
despair.
I feel it. Yeah, that huge moment of despair. But like, yeah, thematically, it kind of poses some problems.
Oh,
well, I
really?
don't know if it does. Maybe it's just a different theme than we're used to. Because instead of it being like, you're going to rise to the occasion, little hobbit, and you are going to bear this burden, but you can actually do it. You can do it. And you get to the end, and he does a thing that no one thought he could do. Instead of that, it is, we are weak as individuals, and you need your team.
I agree with that. But then it's like, well, what solves that? Well, a weaker person. I'm kind of taking it out of context and like a little bit of a straw man, but like
What solves what?
What solves like one person's weakness is like the weakness of another. Like his strength fails. And I totally agree. I think that's a better layering on top of that theme where it's like, okay, even though he was like the most pure, the most good, even he can fail. Even his heart can fail. But then what turns it around and what saves the whole day is that a person even more corrupt than him just takes him down.
See, but I think that the takeaway, that's not what we're supposed to focus. We're not supposed to focus on Gollum being there to save the day. You know, we're supposed to focus on the fact that Gollum is part of this whole apparatus of like evil and addiction and despair that is him grabbing the ring and like attacking Frodo and them kind of like falling together. Like Frodo falls off the cliff, he doesn't fall into the lava, Gollum does, but they both fall. This is the darkest point for both of them. We're not supposed to focus on that. We're supposed to focus on the fact that Frodo couldn't do it by himself, and he was saved by Sam, his best friend, the bonds of friendship, the bonds of brotherhood.
And also his pity
duties.
that he showed Gollum. Like they spared him and that came back.
And that's kind of what I was talking about in
fair.
the Two Towers. I think it was like a real quick throwaway line, but this is why I was kind of like, and that's why I'm against the death penalty. Because you never know. You never know when
It's kind of what Gandalf was saying
happen. Yeah.
in Moria, when he's like, you know, you might need this character to be around. Don't kill him now.
Right.
Because if Gollum wasn't there,
They would have.
well, what do you think would have happened? Do you think?
I think Sam wouldn't have been able to do it. I don't think he could have.
You think
taken
Sam
down
would have
Frodo.
pushed Frodo into the?
Yeah, and that's an
No.
interesting, because I thought I remembered that Sam wasn't affected by the ring, but then when Sam goes to rescue Frodo from the tower, he's holding out the ring, and he does have a moment where he's kind of like, oh, maybe I shouldn't give it. What?
Actually, that's all done in editing. Originally, he was just going to hand it back.
Oh, yeah?
And then in editing, they're like, well, does that kind of take away from the power of the
Yeah,
ring?
I
And
think
so
it
they,
does.
They took shots that he had and they combined them and kind of fade them together to have that
Yeah.
moment of
Also, it's kind of a
hesitation.
plot hole then, because you're just like, just give it to this guy, and he'll just run it in.
Yeah,
He's
we had the
fine.
wrong guy from the get-go.
Because my
It
next
should have just been Sam.
It answers my next question was, what if it was Sam carrying it and Frodo was his support character there? Would Frodo? We all love Sam, the way that Sam acts, like, I'll carry you, you know?
Yeah.
You can go alone, but I'm coming with you, kind of thing.
Yeah.
I don't think they would have made it. Frodo's a little bitch.
But maybe it's just because he is more subdued and kind of like introspective character than Sam. But like, do you think they would have just switched roles and Frodo would have carried Sam and it would have been Sam who like couldn't go on?
It's kind of hard because we don't actually see a ton of Frodo before he gets the ring. So like, Frodo as a character for us is defined as to struggle with the ring. Like that's a characteristic of him.
We know in the book that he is different than the other hobbits.
Yeah.
Right.
That's why Bilbo likes him. He has a bit of his uncle in him.
Yeah,
right?
yeah. And so it is hard for me to answer that. I think that I something tells me the more perfect reality is that this is the way it had to happen, and in a reality in which like Sam has to bear the ring and Frodo has to support him. Like I don't want to think that that could have worked
Why?
just fine.
You don't think that's
I think that
more
because it's
beautiful and moral that either one of them could have done it?
Because it's so beautiful for Sam's character to be this unrelenting, loyal archetype of like perseverance and hope that like we don't really map that onto Frodo so much. So maybe Frodo does have that
I
potential.
get what you're saying, but I think it's more of an uplifting story if it's like, you know, you would have done the same. You know, when you give
Sure.
somebody accolades and you're like, man, you would have done the same thing as me in
Sure.
that situation. Because we know just by virtue of the fact that those two people made it that far, either of them could have been there for each other.
Yeah, fair enough. I'll give it to you. Maybe it could have been fine if they were reversed.
Like, they really truncate the amount of time that the hobbits are in Mordor and stuff in these movies. Like, they battle Shelob halfway through this movie instead of at the end of the second movie. And I think that's just because, if memory serves, they just don't do anything in Mordor. It's just a lot of walking around, climbing, sleeping,
Burning
kind of
stuff.
philosophical conversation.
running out of food.
Having philosophical.
Yeah.
All the orcs are like.
No, like between themselves.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
I mean, like that's all the orcs do in Mordor because there's nothing to do.
I think it's a smart choice because even in the second movie, Sam and Frodo don't have that much to do, but it doesn't matter because Aragorn is kind of the center of that movie. And then in this movie, it has to return to Frodo because really he is the protagonist of the series. It's will he destroy the ring?
Right.
And so it's good to give him something extra in this movie to do so that it doesn't feel so fucking boring.
Right.
Speaking of doing things, do you guys ever wonder, like, again, archetypes? Do you think that, like, the orcs and the bad guys, they're all just evil archetypes, right? But I can't escape the thoughts of, what the hell do these guys do when they're just not at war?
That
What
is
do they-
something.
What do the orcs do all day?
From a lore perspective, that is as a bit of a lore nerd with other franchises, and this one a little bit. That is something that bothers me because I'm like, well, the orcs are clearly sentient, conscious, intelligent beings.
Where are the orc women?
We don't know if there are any. Maybe they're
I think the orc
asexual.
women basically look like orc men.
men.
There is a hot orc in this movie.
What?
The one, so like
Male or female?
I don't know the orc captain's name.
Male.
I don't know.
Golgoth? Golgomoth?
They're androgynous. I think that's what makes them hot. Okay, I'm
Sure.
using hot orc in like a not actually hot, but like the orc captain with the messed up face
Yeah,
in
Golgoth, I
Osgiliath
believe.
when like Faramir's second in command or whatever, he's still alive, and the orc captain comes up and spears him. The orc that he takes the spear from is the hot orc. And later, when the Rohirrim are charging and they're all shooting arrows at them, there's like a close up on his face too, and he like does these wide, or she, I don't know. It's androgynous.
I think I know which orc you're talking about.
Yeah,
I
right.
have no,
just 'cause
fucking
I-
Got piercing
clue.
eyes.
It's like there's this orc
and
who's
smooth skin.
they just show this one a few times.
Yeah.
He's got
yeah.
long
Okay.
hair.
yeah.
Yeah,
I
I
need
don't.
help.
Yeah.
I'm not saying hot orc like, oh man, I'm attracted to this orc, but I just objectively
Yeah,
they
yeah.
have
They're like
pleasing
the
features.
normal.
Yeah.
All right, you would.
Maybe
yeah,
I would.
I just don't know because it's like, yeah, the reign of orc is here. It's like, well, what does that entail? Do you guys just ever chill and play games? Like, what do they?
Yeah,
Ever
and
do.
I think that's why you kind of have to think of Lord of the Rings as like an archetypal story. I resist, like, in one of the previous podcasts, I went and like read a ton of the lore and stuff because I'm like, oh, this is kind of interesting. But I think that that's also why I don't want to see this Amazon show. I don't think that there
Yeah.
needs to be an MMO because I like it more as this sort of like contained archetypal story. And if you keep digging too far into those stories, they break down.
Especially if it's a series where there's going to be like 30 episodes.
Totally.
'Cause, like, what did they say? There's going to be 3 seasons?
I don't know.
planned?
I don't care.
We will talk about it when the time comes.
We're all going to watch it, right?
Yeah, I'm
if
gonna
we
watch
watch it
it.
and it's good, it could be the first TV show that we cover
Oh,
if
maybe.
we're all watching it.
We gotta watch The Boys. That's the one we should
Yeah,
fucking cover.
I have
Yeah,
yet to start that
boy.
one.
Do
Okay,
you know
wait.
what the worst moment in the entire Lord of the Rings series is?
What?
When Legolas takes down that fucking elephant.
Really?
That is the worst
You
moment
think
in
that's
this entire
worse
series.
than the horse loop-de-loop?
For sure, because it's like a minute-long sequence. Like the CG is terrible. It's like stupid. The power level that he has in there makes no sense in this universe. There's a Wilhelm scream. He takes the dude off, and then the elephant falls down, and he Fred Flintstones down the fucking trunk.
That's the most egregious moment.
That is the worst.
I don't
part of
actually
this.
have a problem with him when he's on it and he cuts the saddle.
Yeah, that's fine.
Uses it to hoist himself up. He
Yeah, it's
does
kinda
some
cool,
do
yeah.
some good arrow shots. Like that's all within his power. But it's the surfing off it. He's always surfing.
Yeah,
It was
for
that
some-
time. Skateboarding
he's
was
got those
cool.
boarding,
slippery
boarding
elf
was
shoes.
Yeah.
board sports were big at that time. Yeah,
Yeah, I really-
they don't bother me that much. I'm just kind of like, they need some silly. They need some fun action
I think
things.
what it goes to go is just Gimli and Legolas are so thinly realized as characters. Like they're
Right.
so underdeveloped, and it's kind of a shame that they just don't really do much. Like basically, their arc is to like not be racist, and that's cool.
But they
Yeah.
they did that.
yeah, they did that
2 movies
too.
ago.
Yeah, exactly. And so like, it kind of just sucks that like we talked about, like there's the 2 pairs of hobbits that are like best friends. Aragorn has this huge arc. Like Boromir had a better arc than Legolas and Gimli in one movie. And like it kind of really does dig. The more I think about it, the more it's digging at me that like Gimli and Legolas are really not that interesting
See,
as characters.
I think that this is why I said I couldn't give an objective rating to this movie because, these things exist. There are weaknesses with the movie. Obviously, it's not a perfect movie. There is no such thing as a
such
perfect
thing, yeah.
movie. But
Except for Scott Pilgrim.
It'd be cool if they
whatever.
had something to
But-
do at the end.
But I think that the rest of the movie and the franchise, the decisions that they've made about story and character and the attention to detail with the effects and just everything else in this franchise is so perfect. It's hard to describe that the things that aren't perfect are like not as important to me. Like I 100% agree with you that and I said this in the previous movie that they're kind of non-characters. They're just there to be cool.
Comic relief and fight scenes.
But it's okay. Like this is a movie I watch and there are things that are wrong with it, but in my mind I say, but it's okay.
You know what
Yeah,
the best
100%.
moment is? At the end, when the hobbits are all standing there and there's this like huge congregation of people and everybody kneels to the hobbits. Right. That is closing the loop on their whole thing.
Yeah,
where they've been little people in a big world
Yeah.
who didn't know what the hell they were getting into, and it just totally closes that. That's
Totally.
a powerful
The
moment.
movie could have ended there. That could have been the final scene.
Okay, wait, yeah, let's talk about this. Do you guys think it? Well, the extended definitely drags on a bit long.
I think that I'm glad the extended version exists because it's nice to get this very clear closure of every character. But I think like everything after that's kind of unnecessary. Like you don't really need to know that Frodo will sail off this earth in a straight line.
Really?
I found out the
think that's
physics
important.
of what happens
Okay,
there.
well, you don't find that out of the movie.
Wait,
The
No,
movie-
I listened to a talk from a Tolkien professor.
Okay, but the
What
movie
is
doesn't.
this?
So
Whatever.
the Middle Earth used to be flat, and then in the Second Age it became spherical.
What?
And so when they're sailing to the west, they're literally sailing in a straight line off the planet to the west.
Hell yeah, dude.
Wait, I thought the Second Age
Grey Havens.
was before this movie.
Yeah, this is before. It
This
used
is
to
the
be
Third
flat.
Age.
Oh, so in
It used
this,
to be flat. Now we're on a planet.
so in
Now
this
we're
in this movie, they're boating off on around Earth,
Yeah.
just a different place.
so but off the Earth in a straight line.
Oh.
So like as if the Earth was still flat.
Oh, damn.
Archetypal story.
Shit, dude.
Don't make it real. Yeah. No, I think that, I mean, we can talk about which parts are in the extended version or not, but I think that the ending sequence where the hobbits come back to the Shire, it feels weird because, you know, in movies like Star Wars or whatever, it's like they blow up the Death Star and then they're done. That's basically
you
the
get
end.
the ceremony.
Yeah.
and-
Dude, if you think the
But-
movie drags on too long, the book,
Yeah.
because
yeah.
this they
There's
didn't
like a
have
whole
the-
nother book
They don't
in it,
have the
yeah.
scouring of the Shire
Yes.
where Sauron and I believe Wormtongue also go to the Shire and
Yeah.
and everyone gets back and they have to like take them out.
have to take the back-
so
the Shire back, yeah.
brutal.
Yeah.
I remember being a kid and being like, what the fuck?
Yeah.
Like we just destroyed the ring and now there's still 150 pages or something. It's
Yeah,
insane.
talk about an anticlimax.
Well, and it's hard too because like in the scope of the 12 hours experience, like having a 45-minute ending makes sense, but in one movie having that much ending doesn't feel like it's
Yeah.
the right proportion.
But Riley, I think that I like that the moment where you see them back in the Shire and they're in the pub and everything is the same,
Totally.
but nothing's the same.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
they're looking at their beers and looking at each other. But then they just cheers and go on. That
Yeah.
is that's just like a veteran's experience.
Totally.
And I like that moment.
I think
Is that extended?
No, that's in the theatrical. And so I normally I think in a movie we don't expect to see that stuff. We're just kind of like, we don't need to see them going home and like saying hi to everybody and trying to go on with their lives. Like we don't need to see that. Like just end the movie because that's a tighter story. But I think that it's the victory in Mount Doom is not even like the climax of the story. I watched a video essay on this, okay? So I'm stealing from Just Right, I think, had a
great,
video
great
about
channel.
just this thing. It was like a 12-minute video just about this, and I thought it was like, oh, I hadn't thought about this before. The victory of Mount Doom is the climax of the plot, because the plot is kind of like what happens in the story, right? They get the ring, they go to Mordor, they throw the ring into the fire. But the story is more related to the characters and the themes and what is being learned. And so the climax of the story is Frodo going away to the Undying Lands, because that's kind of like his whole arc from the beginning has been taking on this burden and going out into the world and confronting evil. It turns out that you can't confront evil and just be totally fine afterwards. So accepting that and knowing what he needs to do in order to, make things better, in order to like get on with his life, aka or slash death. He accepts death. He accepts the trauma of what happened to him and goes for it.
And
It's
then
a little morbid.
Sam, on the other hand, is like king of the Shire. It's like,
Yeah.
hey, Rosie, how do you like me now?
No, I love that. I love that he gets to marry Rosie and like gets the whole.
And that is nice.
because he does represent this sort of purity that wasn't messed up by the ring. Like he went through this hard experience, but he wasn't like scarred by it in the same way that Frodo
He doesn't
was.
have a fragment of a blade.
Minas Tirith blade. Yeah.
Yeah, I imagine the casting agent who's like, okay, Rosie, okay, we need someone who's hot, but like hobbit. This is a particular look.
Because she's not like hot.
What's the casting?
She's
cost?
cute.
Yeah.
How dare you?
She's cute.
How dare you? Okay, that's the ending, but let's go back to the 3/4 mark where I find the movie drags.
Oh.
After they have I think it's after the Rohirrim come, basically the first big war ends. And then I think this is maybe like around Shelob time or something like that. But there's like a big
Shelob time.
There's like a big sag where it's like, okay, take a big deep breath out and then a big deep breath in for what's gonna happen next. But in between there, I'm just like, "Mwah."
Really? I mean,
Again, I'm watching extended. you're
again,
not.
yeah. There's probably more scenes there that aren't there, but
It's so messed up to be watching a movie for an hour and a half and then like click the little like timeline bar and be like, oh, only 3.5 hours left. You're like, what?
yeah. In the theatrical, I don't think it drags that much. I mean, like, there's that scene where they're talking about what they want to do and they decide to do a diversion, but like that's really the only scene after the Battle of Pelennor Fields. Yeah, they're just like in the throne room and they're talking about what to do. They decide to do the diversion and then they go. So I don't know.
You want to just like do some rapid fire nitpicks?
Yes.
Oh, I have a random. This one is actually like a continuity error. Faramir, he says to Gandalf, I saw the hobbits. Like, whoa, you saw the hobbits? Yeah, I saw them not 2 days ago. What? Gandalf just did a 3-day horseback ride in this movie to get to this city from Rohan.
Uh-oh.
So how the hell?
Peter Jackson, you suck. You suck, dude.
Yeah, that doesn't make any sense.
So dumb. No, that's a straight up plot hole. I'm not going to defend that. What, do you want me to?
I don't know. I'm just like, what's up with that? What's up with, okay, why is it, I get that they're different, okay, but Sauron gets like fireball. He just seems so much more powerful than Gandalf. Gandalf's just using a sword and a stick. And like at one point he does a spotlight on some people to repel them, but like why doesn't he get to shoot fireballs and stuff?
So like my whole deal about magic being like less about beams of light, laser beams and stuff in this one, and more just kind of about like wishy-washy, ooh, it's something and you can't see it and blah blah blah. That's really it's undone by the fact that Sauron shoots a fireball out of his staff.
Yeah.
That's an extended scene, so it's not in the theatrical.
So okay, how does Sauron die in the theatrical? Because
He just disappears.
Grima's
They don't address him. He's just they go to Isengard and Treebeard's there and they talk and they get the Palantir.
and they just find the Palantir in the water.
yeah they
They
don't
just find it there.
Yeah.
Oh,
Sauron
okay.
isn't there.
Because in an extended
They
scene,
talk about him and that they're like he's locked in the tower or whatever. What's that?
well, Sauron falls off of
Yeah,
Isengard
right.
and gets impaled on this like water wheel. I'm like, why does
Brutal.
that have spikes?
Because it's like dark, man.
But it's Isengard.
It's an orc water wheel. They put spikes on everything.
I guess so. Like,
No, you're right.
I like that scene though, because I like that Saruman's power is all in his as an orator. It's all spoken. All his
Right.
power. He's always casting spells by speaking. Like in the first one, he's standing on top of Isengard, getting the Misty Mountains to avalanches and all that.
cool
and
idea.
it's sweet that he just goes character to character, like just dissing them and shaking their confidence.
Yeah.
He's making them despair. He's pushing them to despair.
Language is powerful. You got to be careful with it.
Well, guys, I might have an answer as to why Gandalf isn't as powerful.
Oh.
So I always thought that when
Okay,
he
but
died and came back as white, he like leveled up in rank, but it's not. That's actually not true. The color of the wizards isn't their rank; it's their responsibility. And the
Right.
white wizard is the one that's facing evil. He's the one that's leading the charge, helping men to actually come face to face with evil. Whereas the gray one is the one behind the scenes, kind of doing the personal stuff, kind of uplifting
Right.
people to do that. And that's what Gandalf's been good at. And so maybe as part of his like becoming the one that's actually doing the head to head, he's not fully prepared for that.
I think that he did level up because I think
Well, yes, he also gets a rank
Yeah,
thing, but it's
yeah, but
separate
it's not-
from the white
right.
becoming white.
It's not related.
Yep.
Yeah.
Well, it's definitely
related,
It's
but-
definitely
It's related, but it's not.
It's
because of-
presented that way because it's like, well, you just fought a guy for a long time and then you won, and then now you're back
Yeah.
more powerful. It just kind of seems like that.
Yeah, no, I can understand why people would think that wrongly, but no, yeah, it's when you know about the lore and why things are happening, it's not causal. It's not like he's a white wizard, so he's more powerful. It's like he's more powerful, and also he's a white wizard because Saruman has like abdicated his role basically.
Why is it when they go to the gate and after they talk to the mouth of Sauron, which by the way, my wife finally looks up from her phone and sees that mouth of Sauron character, and she's just like, ew. That guy's awesome.
Ugly. Yeah.
And it's so sick. It's so sick. Again, he's also like Saruman, where he tries to get them to despair, and then the king just chops his head off and then gives us like sick speech. Awesome. But why is it when they're with their plan to have the gates open and empty Mordor, they let themselves get totally enveloped by the opposing army
Instead of making a line.
like you're at a bottleneck. Why don't they just fight them there?
Yeah, you're
I mean,
right.
maybe I'm answering my own question. They want to empty Mordor, but it doesn't make any sense for them to just like, hey guys, just come and surround us. If you really want to empty Mordor, if that's the reason then just back away or something.
like be on your horses.
But if it's really about a battle, then you should just be right up to the bottleneck. It doesn't make any sense.
Well, I don't know. Feel like there's some rationality where if they were too far away from the Black Gate and they're like, come on, come out here, so, like Sauron might know it's a trap or something. I don't know. But the fact that they're like marching up, maybe he's like, oh, they're so desperate. Look at this is all that's left. I freaking killed everybody else. Let's like wipe them out. I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know. They haven't seen 300. They should go right
right at the gate.
They need to find a choke point.
Yeah, that's what the gate is.
Well, sort of.
It's like Thermopylae for them.
Yeah, but I don't think there were enough of them to hold that choke point. Jeez Louise.
Well, it's definitely better than just the getting surrounded.
Can I say, okay, this is kind of like nitpicks and hitpicks. This is more of a hit pick. I like that Treebeard calls Gandalf young. He's like, young Master Gandalf.
Yeah, I guess he
He's one of the
just
oldest-
died, so he's only like 2 months older.
Yeah.
Well, and Treebeard is one of the oldest beings in Middle Earth.
Right.
I think he's like number 2.
Yeah, he's super old, and but I mean, I think Gandalf's probably older than him if you count his
But yeah, he wasn't
life as a spirit or whatever.
Yeah.
Anyways, also Gandalf really lacks tact sometimes. Like he just waltzes up to Denethor and he's like, "Bitch, where's your army? Fucking scrub, you're gonna need help, dude. You suck." And it's like, of course Denethor's not gonna like it. He did the kind of the same thing with Theoden, where he's like, "Listen, man, you're messed up. I don't know. He needs to learn some." Etiquette.
That being said, I love that Gandalf is full of expression. I'm so tired of like the trope of like god characters, like super powerful beings being like neutral and like kind of cold. It's just nice to have like such warmth come out of such a powerful being.
And coldness. Like I love how that Gandalf is like a real, he seems like a real character because he's not just like, I'm a wise wizard. I'm so mysterious.
Yeah, he's like genuinely annoyed by Pippin.
Yeah.
He's like, you're such an idiot.
He gets pissed off.
Then that speech he gives
warmth.
about the afterlife. Ugh.
Oh yeah,
so
about the white shores. Yeah. Navy or no. Did they win an Oscar for sound design? They won like 13 Oscars or something.
One, yeah.
Was sound design one of them? Because man, that scream when Sam and Frodo are at Minas Morgul and they're going up the stairs, or they're about to go up the stairs, and the Witch King, his fell beast, lets out this he lets out this scream, but it's like it's the craziest scream we've ever heard, and it just keeps going and going and going. It just like pierces into your body. I was just like, oh, it's so good. Like it's despair inducing, but it's so good because it is so effective at doing that.
I looked up too what it was. It was like helium escaping from a balloon and like 3 different animals.
Oh man!
And like it's like a 7-layered
It's so
sound.
cool.
But it sounds primal. It sounds like a pterodactyl. It's going to chop your head off.
Okay, last one just for sake of time because I do have to go. I'm sorry, guys.
We're going to stay without you.
Yeah, you guys are going to keep talking for a bit. The Orc Navy SEALs. I thought that was kind of funny that they have these like landing craft and they're like, okay, we're going. It's like the stealth orcs. They got trained or something. And then it's like, what is that strategy that the Gondorians are like letting them run past first?
So they can let themselves be surrounded? Yeah.
I guess
No,
so.
that made sense to me.
Did it?
Yeah.
Because then they can like...
Although they really should attack them when they're in the boat still.
Yeah, just
You can't get out of the
fire
boat.
arrows.
She's like, wait, let them land, and then we'll let them go
D-Day.
past us a bunch. I don't know. It just seemed weird from a stretch.
I like that part though when they're like, it's just a cool scene when they're being quiet and hiding with their swords and they're not being seen.
The tension is there, and that's why they did it, and that's good. Okay, I gotta go. So sorry. Please continue to talk about me after I go.
David, you have something to say?
Well, I was going to do a scientific trilogy ranking altogether, but now Riley's opinion is now void.
Yeah, he's not a scientific dude.
What do you
anyway.
mean?
So we're going to go through, we're going to do kind of like which one has the best from each movie, and then the one that has the most is going to be the official scientific best movie of the series.
Okay, you need to keep talking because I barely understand.
This
So-
is good because it'll ruin my 10 out of 10, so that's a good point for me to leave. See you later.
Okay. Which of the series has the best saying the title moment?
Oh, like the name drop of the movie?
name drop of the movie, because there's like, shall be the Fellowship
The
of the Ring.
Fellowship of
Two
the
Towers,
Ring.
I think it's Saruman being like, oh, in the Two Towers, there's this thing.
What is it in this one?
It's Gandalf being like, authority is not given to you to deny the return of the king.
The first one is the most explicit, where it's just like
Yeah.
the title of the movie.
Yeah, I agree.
The other ones are like they're in context.
Yep.
Gonna have to give it to the first one.
Yeah, I agree. Okay, which one has the best battle?
Oh boy, Helm's Deep. I mean, a lot of the things that are cool in the third one, you've kind of already seen. Like in Helm's Deep, when you see those awesome ladders,
Yeah.
and they have a battering ram there too. In Return of the King, you've kind of seen that already. You've seen trolls already, although these ones just have armor and stuff, which is cool. One thing that's sick is the catapults in Minas Tirith.
Yeah.
The way they have those counterweights that that kind of sag down.
Yeah.
Those are
They
sweet,
look
man.
very sweet. Very, very menacing.
And I like all the debris that just squashes people, like big chunks of marble are falling down. Like, oh, it's rough. But I don't know. Is Helm's Deep the best battle of the whole series?
I think I'll give it to Two Towers. Okay, which movie has the most likable character? Like that character at their most likable.
Oh, like the best version of that
Yeah.
character?
Because I would say it's Sam in Return, where you're just like, he's perfect, and I love him, and I would do anything for him.
True. I like Strider when he's Strider. That's pretty cool.
That's pretty sick too, actually. I didn't even think about that.
But yeah, you got to give it to Sam. Come on. Travesty not to.
Okay, most despicable character.
Got to be Saruman.
You think Saruman? I think it's Denethor. Saruman is like, he's corrupted by this power, but he's not like vile. He's just evil. Whereas Denethor, I'm like, I just want to punch him in the stomach.
Maybe because he's more human. You're just like, get out of here.
Yeah, I can relate.
I'll beat you up. But
I don't know who's worse. Who's worse?
Saruman is corrupted. He's the powerful person that didn't stand. So that like morally he's worse.
Yeah.
Because like you're supposed to be on our side and we're all supposed to band together against this evil. But instead you did the opposite of what the Rohirrim does. You did the opposite of what Theoden does, where it's like, we know we're going to die. We're going to go in because it's the right thing. Instead, he's a coward.
Yeah.
And he tries to ally himself with evil. So he's the worst.
He's the worst. I agree. And then what is the best memeable moment of the series?
They're taking the hobbits to Isengard.
Yeah, that's pretty top. I was going to say the other one is at the Shire when Frodo's just like, all right, keep your secrets.
I think you used that in a chat with me the other day.
I love that one.
That's like not even on my radar. Man.
Really? Oh, that's a pretty big meme. I don't know why that one just fucking kills me.
Okay, so what one? Is that it?
I think taking the Hobbit to Isengard Fellowship. Most frightening moment. This is so easy. Bilbo in the Fellowship. That's by far the scariest.
Oh,
moment.
as far as like a jump scare.
Yeah,
that's like the jump scare of the trilogy for sure.
Yeah, that's it. That's it. And the winner is the entire Lord of the Rings saga.
The winner is us, the audience.
We just got to watch it.
Cool. Well, I'm pretty good. I only had one other little nitpick I wanted to say. It bugs
it.
me every time. Why does Sam and Frodo, I think, hold the light of Elendil like when they're against the spider?
Yeah.
Why are they holding it like that? That's upside down. It clearly looks like it's a handle, and you should have the bulb on top of your hand. Why are you holding the bulb and then the stick sticks out? It's stupid.
Yeah, you're covering most of it.
That is not ergonomic. No, yeah, although I think it looks like it's a liquid maybe.
Yeah, I thought it was like a vial kind of thing.
So no matter how you hold it, you're going to be covering a lot of
Yeah, maybe it's not
emission.
sealed very well.
Or maybe if it was all in that tube part, your hand would just completely block it.
Yeah, they need someone to
But it
redesign
looks
that.
stupid. I don't like it.
Yeah, no, I agree.
This movie sucks.
Fucking garbage.
Redacting my 9.
No,
All right.
I think this is the best movie trilogy. I made a list of like 50 movie trilogies.
There's 50 trilogies, dude?
There's some that are like kind of unofficial, like the Tarantino revisionist history trilogy. Counts,
Oh,
I
yeah,
count
yeah.
stuff-
That's
shit
like a
that.
fan trilogy. But as far as like Star Wars and Lord of the Rings.
There was like
And Harry
35.
Potters.
Because yeah, like I have Cars, Blade, Star Wars prequel trilogy,
Aliens.
Narnia, the Thor, Hobbit. But the best ones are like Cornetto trilogy, the Man with No Name trilogy, Godfather trilogy, which would be the best one if it wasn't for the third. Then Toy Story, and then Lord of the Rings. Lord of the Rings is just consistently awesome all the way
You're putting
through.
it ahead of Toy Story, or behind Toy Story, hey?
No, ahead.
Oh, okay.
This is not Lord of the Rings, number one.
Number 1. It's pretty damn good. Hopefully there'll be like a Dune trilogy or something.
That would be sick.
Actually,
There's at least two, right?
I only want 2. I think I only want 2.
We'll see. They might be able to pull it off. And like sometimes they do a really good job extending books into many movies, and sometimes
Oh,
they do
there's
a good
lots of
job-
books. There's more than...
But they're like kind of like sequel books.
Okay, this is a total Dune challenge. Right?
This is your chance. Tell me about Dune.
The first book is going to be made into 2 movies, but I think there's 4 books in that first like boosh
Okay.
written by the original author.
Yep.
Then he died, and his son went into his attic and found a bunch of material that he had
okay.
written, but his son turned those into books, and those are prequels.
Are those considered less good, or are they like almost on the same level?
I think they're a little less good, but
they're still
okay.
good. Okay.
They're cool.
Huh. I'm
All
excited.
right.
I can't wait. There's movies coming soon. Like Nomadland's coming out like in a couple weeks. And there's like a bunch of big movies. I'm actually really excited for movies in 2021.
Yeah, and I bet the audience is too. I want to know, guys, what movies do you want us to cover in 2021? One thing I realized was there was a ton of originals on streaming services that we didn't cover in 2020. We just did old movies. So let us know at Carpool Critics on Twitter, or you can email us hello@carpoolcritics.ca, because we're Canadian, for email. Let us know what you want us to cover in 2021 for new movies. We got lots of recommendations for old movies. Let's hear about the new ones. What are people excited about?
Kingsman.
That's
I want
it.
New Kingsman. That's what I
New
want to
Kingsman.
see.
And next week we're gonna do Silence of the Lambs with Sarah.
Yeah.
Join us then.
And have a nice Chianti.
Bye bye. Hello, Clarice.